Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 183. My name is NBZ and I've got a co-host here who's just bleeding to death on me. Bally is here and he's somehow just managed to rip the thread of the universe on his hand, and this bodes very poorly for his PlayStation 5 playing at the current time. Bally, you join me now. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I would warn people to look out for tins of anchovies when you're trying to open them. And yeah, kind of sliced the bottom of my thumb, and yeah, it's not great. But you know, Caroline came to the rescue. She got the plaster. It's all sorted.
Love it. Very nice.
Plastered up, and yeah, I've not attempted to kind of hold my PS5 controller since doing it, so I'm a bit nervous about trying that, especially with that DualSense rumble going on.
Oh goodness, yeah, it's just gonna mess you up even worse. That laughter you also heard in the background, it means we have someone else on the show, Bally. It's a ghost who joins us. No, of course. So obviously we're doing an episode about Mario Sunshine, so who better to bring on than the Mario Sunshine Pope himself, Devon from EmblemCast.
I need reinforcements.
You need people on your side, Bally, because judging by the emails, the people don't like this video game, but we'll get to that. Devon, welcome back. Obviously you were on the show when we did our Last of Us spoiler cast.
Thank you.
Yeah. From one great game to another.
Exactly.
Sure, totally. How you doing, Devon?
I would say the narratives are pretty equal as well.
Yes. Yeah, totally comparable. How you doing? How's things going over there?
They're going. COVID's spiking, all that great stuff.
Yep. Yes, of course. Yeah, I think we all still living in a futuristic hellscape. But, we're getting there.
We're
right?
getting there.
You fixed one of your problems,
look
right? Like
good.
that's a step in the good direction. Mm-hmm. So, cool. Well, we're here to talk about video games and the things we've been playing, and go in detail about it. So that's what we're gonna do. Bally, you can tell people what we're going to be talking about today.
First segment, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing, and the second segment, we're going to continue our celebration of 3D Mario and obviously talk about Super Mario Sunshine. You've written in with your thoughts and comments, so we're going to get to all those and share what we think about the game.
Absolutely. There's lots of things that will be said. But let's kick things off with video games, and there's a new release, I guess, on Switch relatively. I guess it's like almost 3 weeks ago now, but Devon, you've been playing the re-release of Pikmin 3 on the Switch, which Bally and I both played on Wii U, so it didn't really seem appropriate for us to just get it again, because, it's one of those things where everyone's bought Mario Kart 8 again, and me and Bally are just very stubbornly like, no, we already paid for that video game. You won't make us do it twice, Nintendo.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still... I think, to my knowledge, that's still the best-selling game on Switch, right? I think Animal Crossing...
It is, yeah. I think it's up at 28 million. Animal Crossing is close behind at 26, but yes, it is up there.
I think it probably... I mean, from the trajectory that game has had, I would be surprised if Animal Crossing doesn't overtake it by the end of the Switch's lifetime. But
totally, yeah. But yeah, Pikmin, how's it been going?
So, Pikmin 3, not quite as... not quite of as much of a smash success. Not quite of a big hitter, but I really, really enjoyed Pikmin. So I played my introduction to the series, very similar actually to the game that we're about to talk about today. I think like a lot of people, I found out about Pikmin through Smash Brothers Brawl with Olimar and everything being in that game. And I picked up Pikmin 1 on Wii with the whole new Play Control series that Nintendo was doing at the time.
Yes.
Because back in probably 2010 or 2011, something like that, Chugga Conroy was doing a Let's Play of Pikmin 1. So that was my introduction to the series. And I've played 1, 2. I don't think not that I remember at least, I don't think I beat 1 or 2, but I did play them a decent amount. And I just never ended up picking up Pikmin 3 on Wii U for whatever reason. It was one of the very few first-party Nintendo titles that I missed out on. But I was excited for the Deluxe release, and... Yeah,
so on Wii U, it was like a quote-unquote launch window game.
Right,
by launch window, they meant like 9 months after the system came out, which probably contributed to a lot of people being like, I bought this Wii U, this is stupid, I'm going to sell it now, before the Pikmin game even happened, so, yeah.
Yeah, I really, really, really like Pikmin 3. I think it's great. There's quite a bit of a quality of life changes and improvements from what I understand from the Wii U to the Switch port, but Pikmin 3 is awesome. It still looks great. It's kind of disappointing. I'm not sure if you heard. It wasn't even upscaled to 1080p. I think it's still running at
Are you kidding me?
720p.
Really?
Yep. So it's the same as it was
even
on Wii U.
even docked on the TV, it's
Yes.
still at 720.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Jeez,
god.
man.
Yeah. I don't really understand why. It's not. I mean, I'm not I'm not a programmer or anything, but I would be shocked if the Switch couldn't run that game at because I think it runs at 30. I would be shocked if it
Yeah,
couldn't
it
run
does.
that
Yeah.
at 30 1080p. But yeah, for some reason it was kept at 720. Another one of those weird Nintendo things. But it still looks good. I think that's one of those games that's kind of held up by its art style more than anything. Some of the texture work looks a little bit dated, but for the most part, it's still quite a pretty game.
When I think about food in video games and like good-looking
God,
food,
yeah.
Pikmin 3 is always on my list
Yes.
of like, man.
In my mind, it was one of. I mean, there were a lot of very good looking Wii U games, but Pikmin 3 was up there in terms of how good it looked. Even beyond the fruit, I always thought it looked really good. So
Yeah.
it's interesting if it's not quite aged as rose tinted in my mind.
I still think it looks great. Like it's not far off from what I think I would expect a modern Pikmin game to look like that wasn't released in what 2014 or 13, I think. I don't even
2013, I believe.
2013.
Yeah, it was the year after launch of Wii U.
God,
Yeah.
we are old.
Yeah, 7 years ago,
Jesus
man.
Christ.
Jesus.
I still like Wii U games are still so fresh in my mind. I'm like, oh yeah,
Totally, yeah.
New Super Mario Bros. U just came out on Wii U or something
Yeah,
like that.
no.
It's like that was 2012.
Yeah.
Jesus. But yeah, no, I think Pikmin 3 is great. One of the few complaints that I have that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about. I'm not a huge fan of and this is the same problem that I have with Mario Galaxy on the collection, which you guys will get to. But I've mostly played Sunshine, but I messed around with Galaxy a bit. But since we don't have, the sensor bar and the whole infrared tracking system that was used on the Wii, whenever you're using the Joy-Cons or the Pro Controller to aim the cursor, which I think pretty much anyone who's played any of the Pikmin games will tell you is definitely the way you want to play those games. It's
Yeah.
100%.
you don't want to play them with sticks. There's just constant recalibration, and there's a button to do it, but it's just I don't
Is it
know.
just like
gyro.
clicking in the stick? To
It's not
reset
clicking
it?
in the stick. I think you hit R to reset it.
Okay.
But
It's not as good as just a Wiimote, is it? It just
no,
feels a
it's
bit
not. Yeah,
delayed and yeah.
that's one of the things I kind of don't think the Wii gets enough credit for. With however wonky those motion controls can be, and how it without the motion, plus it didn't really track movement. It just tracked if you moved more than anything.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah.
The sensor bar and the pointer controls worked really quite well, I think.
I think that Pikmin 3 on Wii U is the best motion controls in any video game I've ever played.
Yeah.
Like there's something about it that is just so instinctual, and you also have the gamepad there to like do your micromanagement. It's awkward, right? Because you have to like have a gamepad on a stand
That's what I was
while
gonna
also
say,
having
yeah.
motion controls.
Or on your lap, or
on your
it's
lap or
weird.
whatever. But it is kind of the perfect setup for that game,
Yeah.
weirdly.
You are only ever tapping it, so you're almost combining like Wiimote nunchuck and then with the gamepad on your lap, and you're just kind of tapping. I would always find I'm just tapping with the outside of my nail points to
Right.
like move my characters around and that sort of thing. It never felt like I was having to do anything overly involved with the gamepad, which I kind of worked by the fact that it was sitting on my lap wobbling around, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does that stuff work on the Switch then? Are you just going to a sub-menu to a map where you're directing the captains to?
You just hit plus and the map is basically identical from what I can tell. I think the only thing they changed is they made it a little bit more user-friendly where I think in the original you open up the map by walking around, and now the map you can't go to places that you haven't walked to before, but the like outline of the map is present from the start, so you can kind of see how big the areas are and everything. But
Cool.
yeah, for the most part, other than that, I think the game plays really really well on Switch. Like I said, there's been some quality of life things like if you say throw some Pikmin to carry something back to your ship, and you whistling Pikmin in the area back around, Pikmin that are doing tasks have to be whistled twice to get them returned to your party. So it just
Clever.
yeah, it just small little things like that are super, super clever. And another one, I don't remember if this was in the Wii U version or not, but there's a couple of instances, actually quite a few, where you have Pikmin carrying like little ceramic shard things to
Yes,
make a
yeah, broken
bridge.
pieces of pottery or
Yes,
whatever.
to make
Yeah.
a bridge, and they will automatically go back and continue to pick them up. You don't have to keep throwing Pikmin there. So once they finish the task, they go back and will pick them up. So if you don't have enough to do the task at once, they'll, the AI is smart enough to do it. So little things like that are really nice. They also improved the charge mechanic, so you can lock onto enemies at any point, even when you're not going to charge. So you can lock on them to throw things, and you can also charge specific Pikmin types if you don't want just everyone to run. If there's a fire enemy, you can just use the red Pikmin. Like I said, little stuff like that is really
Yeah.
nice and would
That
be.
stuff just adds up though, doesn't it? Right?
It
Like it just
really
makes it a more
does.
polished,
Yeah.
smooth experience overall,
hmm
which is really nice to hear.
Absolutely.
Um,
In particular, going from, someone who played Pikmin 2, now missing out on the
yes.
original version of 3 to this. 3 already
Yeah, it
had a
must be
lot of.
just a really big jump
Yeah,
overall.
absolutely.
Have you been mainly playing it on TV or on handheld?
I played, I think, entirely on TV, which is one of the few
Yeah.
Switch games I did, just because there are motion controls with the handheld version, but it's kind of a weird in between from what I remember. So you can turn gyro on when you're using handheld, but it still uses stick control. So it's kind of like Splatoon aiming, if that makes any sense. How
Hmm.
in
Yes.
Splatoon
Yeah.
aiming, you're usually using the stick for your x-axis, your left and right movement, but up and down on with the motion controls, and that's how it works with the pointer. So I mean, it's okay. It's probably better than just the stick, but I'd much rather play on the television. And I have been using one of the few Switch games I've not been using the Pro controller for. I've been using split Joy-Cons for it, just to give it a little bit more of that Wiimote and nunchuck feel. And aiming the pointer feels more natural.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there are a very few games that I feel that way about, and Mario Galaxy is one of
Yes,
them. Because
that's the
like when
other
I was
one.
playing that with Pro Controller, I was like, this feels wrong. So I just
Yeah,
broke out the two Joy Cons. I was like, this is how this game is
I
supposed to
know.
feel. It's super weird, but yeah,
I know.
it does.
It's crazy. But I really really love this game. I'm kind of finding difficulty to actually come up with things to talk about it with. It's just kind of
Yeah.
Pikmin but refined, really.
What do you think of the
It's
final boss?
Oh, I talked to NBC about that a little while
Yeah.
ago. I think I it seems like from what I've seen online, it's a pretty common opinion, but I think that whole final section of the final level along with the final boss kind of blows. It's
Yeah,
pretty bad. It's
yeah.
it's
It's
definitely the
not the
worst
best.
part of the
Yeah.
game.
I remember going through it and thinking it's not as bad as people said it was, but it's still like, you're just going through this entire place like multiple times just to get a
Yeah.
shot at doing damage
hmm
essentially,
I
which
think it
is,
was
you know,
probably a little more painless for me because as we discussed on stream the other day, I think I'll mention it in this podcast. So for those of you who have picked up Pikmin 3 Deluxe and didn't know this going in, like I didn't, normal mode, because there's difficulty options for the first time in the series, I believe. Normal mode is technically easy mode. The hard mode is the original difficulty on the Wii U release, and normal mode I think is a double. You get double
you
time
just get
per
more time in
day.
the day,
Yeah.
right?
So it's
Yeah.
it's not one of those things like it doesn't really make a significant impact on gameplay. And if
Yeah,
anyone has
because I
paid,
never felt myself like needing more time. In fact, one of my favorite things about Pikmin 3 is the fact that you're like, oh, how much can I get done in
absolutely,
this limited
yeah.
amount of time? And it almost has that one more day Stardew Valley type of
hmm
thing of like, oh, well, I can just go back and because I know where that thing is now and I have time now to go
Yeah.
and get it.
Yeah,
Like it
yeah.
really has that kind of really good loop built in, which is why I would think like normal mode might make your play session shorter to some degree because
Mm.
you're like, oh, I actually got everything done that time and I don't know where to go next, so I'm going to take a break now. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. No, there
Yeah.
there were a couple of times when I was just going back through the four main areas of the game to get the fruit. There were sometimes I just have like, a 2 minute long day where it's like, all right, I just got to get like one or two fruits, then that's it. That's all I
And
have for
bounce,
the
yeah,
area.
for sure.
Yeah. No, Pikmin 3 is awesome. There's still some things I kind of don't quite understand, which again, this has been mentioned ad nauseum when people have talked about this game. I find the lack of purple and white Pikmin a little bit strange.
So they have the winged ones now instead,
Right.
don't they? And then like rock Pikmin.
And rock rock kind of replaced purple, which makes a little bit more sense. But white uh, and the pink winged Pikmin don't quite fulfill the same niche. I think one of the reasons they might have done it is that you're limited to 100 Pikmin, so having 7 colors that you need to manage with 100 Pikmin could be a little bit too much, but they could also just raise the cap. There's no reason that it has to be 100. I think there certainly was on the GameCube, but
I mean, it's that thing with
Switch.
Nintendo, right? It's like sometimes something that it just becomes tradition, even though we're at a point where we don't need it anymore, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's always been done this way, therefore it shall continue to be done this way. So
exactly
probably what that is, I'd imagine.
Do you think this game does a good job to sort of set the blueprint for if and when Nintendo decide to bring out Pikmin 4, because we know it's been ready for about a decade at this point?
Exactly.
If Pikmin 4 comes to Switch, is this control set, the options this game has, do you think it sticks to the landing and that like Pikmin 4 with a few new ideas obviously could do well?
I think so. I think so. That's the big thing. I would like to see more new ideas in Pikmin 4, just because other than the 2 new Pikmin types, and rock Pikmin basically have one use. It's just they break the crystals. That's about it. Winged get
it's
a
such
fair
a satisfying like sound design on the crystals breaking, and I love all that stuff in that game.
Yeah, but wing Pikmin have more of a niche. But other than that, I think Pikmin 3 plays it pretty safe. It's just kind of a return to form after 2 did some weird stuff. So I would really like to see them add some more ideas and innovate more. But in terms of quality of life stuff and control and everything like that, I think it's probably as good as you could get on Switch. One thing I would like to see, I actually don't remember if this is in the game or not, but it might make handheld play a little bit more viable of an option. I think touch controls could work pretty well for this game. Yeah.
So they did. They added that as a patch to Pikmin 3, like maybe a year after the fact. The touch controls.
Did they really? More than a year.
It may be longer than that. Yes, but I believe that they did bring those touch controls into the Switch version if you're playing on handheld.
Okay, I'll have to try that out then, because I mean, obviously I'd probably rather use the controller gyro setup, but still touch controls for this kind of game. It works pretty well. It's the similar kind of thing with Mass Attack, and I know it's how everyone's favorite Pikmin game, Hey Pikmin, controlled on 3DS.
Never got around to that one.
No, I don't think many did.
Hey, that's one, Bally, when we just dragging through the old 3DS games at some point, you should play Hey
Do you guys have new 3DSs? Because from what I've heard, that game runs like dog shit on the original 3DS.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I do have a new 3DS.
Yes,
so yeah.
Me too.
That's good, because I've heard reports of it getting down. It kind of sounds like
like it's a 2D platformer, man. How is that a thing, right? Like I get it.
I think it looks terrible. The art style is not doing that game any favors, in my opinion.
No, I mean I totally understand it with like Hyrule Warriors on 3DS,
sure.
but Hey Pikmin, like come on, man,
I
sort it out. But hey, that's how it goes. Anything else you've been playing, Devon?
So I have been playing a little bit of Bug Fables, which I know NBZ, you mentioned that you had played at the start of this year, right?
Yeah, so I played it earlier this year when it kind of was getting a lot of buzz.
Right.
I got a review code for it and went through, and I liked it a lot. I think it's it definitely is. If you were the type of person who's annoyed at where Paper Mario has gone, hey, guess what? This is for you. Totally one of those games.
Right. That's definitely, I'm definitely one of those people, I would say. I don't know if I quite have the undying crazy affinity for Paper Mario that some people do.
Yeah, I think like there's some degree to which it's gone a bit over the top with people in terms of how much they like those games. Like they're good games, but yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in particular, I played 64, but in particular Thousand Year Door, which I think most people agree with, is really the standout of that series. But yeah, Bug Fables is awesome. I am in chapter 3 right now, so I'm still pretty early on.
You've got 3 characters.
Yeah, I have 3 characters.
Doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is one of the big changes, I guess, that there's no partner system anymore. There's just 3 party members that level up with you as the game goes along, which I think works in a lot of ways. I don't know if I would want to see it necessarily. I probably wouldn't want to see it in a mainline Paper Mario game, but for this game it works, in particular because the camaraderie between those 3 characters is kind of a a big part of the story.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I think Bug Fables is awesome. I will say I am part of it is because I've been playing on hard mode the whole time, which I think I mentioned to you. It's just because
Yeah, it's like an optional equipable badge, right? Where you
right.
can just put it on. And honestly, like, I found Bug Fables pretty tough without hard mode, to be honest. So
I was just gonna say I like even regular enemies will mess me up in that game
totally,
sometimes.
like, you really have to have enough items on you. And one of the things I think actually at the end of the game that made it a lot easier for me was there are certain items you can buy or you can cook. Actually, there's like a weird cooking system in the
Right.
game where if you have certain items, you take them to this guy and he'll make something ridiculous like that full heals all your party and also gives all your
Yeah.
mana back. It's
Well, that was in Paper Mario as well, if I remember. At least in Thousand Year Door. I don't know if it was in 64. Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure. But anyway, those items at the end, final boss stuff, helped me a huge amount because
yeah.
I don't think I would have survived through without those.
How
So
long was your playthrough of that game? Because I've seen it. It seems to be longer than you'd think.
yeah, it's like 15 hours, which was shorter than my Origami King playthrough. I think Origami King was like 25 to 30.
Wow,
So
really?
for me, it's a much shorter experience overall than most of these types of games. But also, I didn't really do a lot of the side stuff.
Yeah.
Like I kind of brushed past that, which I know a lot of other people dug more into. I was much more there to.
Yeah, I've been going into the side stuff. I've really been enjoying it.
Yeah, I think it'll take you a bit longer if you kind of do everything,
hmm
basically.
Yeah, I will say one thing. This is true about all the Paper Mario games, just RPGs in general. My God, I think the dialogue and the writing is pretty good for the most part in Bug Fables, but characters just don't shut up sometimes.
Yes, yeah, they will. They'll keep going, man.
They will keep going.
There's a lot of it.
But yeah,
Um,
no, I think the combat is great. I think seeing a Paper Mario game that actually like gives you a bit of a challenge is kind of a cool thing because I think that's another thing people don't quite remember about the original two games. They are not as difficult as, when you played them when you were 12 years old or whatever.
Totally right. Like you have much better dexterity to be like, oh, and press it at the right time.
Yeah,
Great, I got the boost,
exactly.
or defend or whatever. Yeah,
Exactly.
100%.
But no, I picked it up because if you guys don't know, there was a 1.1 or 1.2 or something like that update that added a couple of small things, and I just seen a little bit of conversation crop up about it again lately, and I was like, you know what, I'm looking for something else to play after Pikmin and something to
hmm
that I won't, you know, go on and on in this podcast about, but something to, take my grasps away from Civilization 6.
Sure. Yeah,
So
like just
yeah.
something different.
So Bug
Um,
Fables has been a nice little dessert, I guess.
yeah. Bally, I'm interested. Do you have any interest in checking this out at some point, or would you rather go back to, say, Paper Mario on N64 before playing something like Bug
I
Fables
don't
this
know.
year?
I'd like to give them both a go at some point and like compare them. I think just because more people talk about obviously N64, Paper Mario, I just feel like it's something I need to go back and do at some point more
Yeah.
so. But
Yeah.
I'd like to try both.
Cool. Yeah, it's one of those games that I think when I first saw it, the art style was very very unappealing to me. Like, there's something about the character designs where it's like, was this just made in paint? Like
Yeah.
this, there is almost that.
Wow.
Yeah, not to be mean about it, but there is definitely a style to it, even if I don't think it's that like refined necessarily. It works with what they're going for, which is more like a 2D flat characters in a
Yeah.
in a kind of polygonal world. So
I like the theming, I will say. I think I wasn't
yeah, totally.
I was watching Arlo's review before I picked up the game, and he said a similar thing where he wasn't super sold on like the bug-centric theme and all the characters being bugs and stuff, but very quickly when you get through the game, they have some cool, fun, creative designs, and I think it was a good
Yes.
call.
It's very much the Honey I Shrunk the Kids vibe, which
Yeah.
is, I would say, similar and Grounded as well, which Bally and I played a bunch of this year, of like, you're in this place, but it's actually just a garden. And there's a moment in Bug Fables where you go up somewhere high and you're using a telescope, and you're like, oh, it's literally just a garden. This entire world, this kingdom is just someone's garden.
That's cute.
And I find that funny.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat. Great. Sounds good. Good stuff. I have been playing a fuck ton of Hades, obviously. I think I'm at 29 wins now.
There you go. Wow.
And I'm trying to get to like the final stuff, which I've read a bit about how to do, and I think I'll get there in the end. But besides that, Return of the Obra Dinn went on sale on Switch, and it's one of those infamous games. Like, there are a few like this, like Owl Boy, Night in the Woods was one of them for a while. Return of the Obra Dinn just never fucking goes on sale for a decent price. It's either like 10% off or just never on sale. And so it was 50% off, and I was like, oh shit, I need to jump on this thing because everyone has been raving about it. People just talk about it as one of the best games, most innovative games in years. And so, yeah, I picked it up and got it on Switch. It is a really good version, I would say, on the Switch. Like, runs really smoothly. And the style is definitely standout. Like, that's the thing to me that is probably the most appealing about it, is it's this very kind of pixel aesthetic, but every color it's monochromatic but also kind of sepia toned, but everything is made up of like clearly very, very tiny dots, even though it's a 3D space. Like, you could almost take any scene from it and you could see how all the pixels like come together to make a painting almost, but then you can also move around in the space, and so it's really weird but very cool, especially because the idea behind it is you're this insurance adjuster who goes onto the ship. You have a magic clock that basically shows you the moments before someone has died, and then you kind of walk through a frozen scene. So the first one is like a guy with a gun shooting it, and you could see the explosion blast out his gun, and some other guy getting hit by the bullet with like blood spraying out of him, and you can just literally walk around this entire scene and like look at where other people are, and kind of just try and figure out what's going on. I think that to me is probably its most appealing part, because the rest of it I find really overwhelming and intimidating.
Yes. Yeah.
To a really great degree. So basically the idea is this ship has returned from sea. A lot of people, I think most people, have either died on it or disappeared from the ship, and no one knows what's happened with it. So you basically go around trying to solve the mystery of what happened to every single person on the ship. And so you have this kind of log of names with nationalities next to them and jobs next to them and things like that, as well as these kind of drawings, these pictures that were taken of all the entire crew. So you can always match a face when you're in one of those dioramas to someone on the picture that was drawn. So you always kind of have a direct correlation between the two. And I think the clever thing about it is that it feeds you information in very small kind of drips and drabs. Like, when you first enter a diorama, you will hear a bunch of stuff that's going on, whether it be like a gun blast or, you know, something with the sea is going on, or someone has fallen on the ground. Like, these noises and the sound design is trying to illustrate a story to you before you then see the scene which played out after that moment has happened. So, like, sometimes someone will throw a name out there, but then there'll be like 10 people in the diorama, and you have to figure out, like, okay, well, who was saying that, and who, you know, were they referring to? Whose name is that? And it kind of helps in terms of the person who has died will always have an X next to their name and their dialogue, so you'll always know what they were saying. If they were the person who died in that scene, they'll have an X next to them. But like, having gone through the entirety of the ship and seen every single one that I could see, I was at the point where I had like 12 people, and there are 60 people on the ship. And so this idea of like going back through, looking at every single one again, one of the things I don't like is you can't quickly access these memories directly from your journal. Your journal kind of shows you all these people, and each page has, you know, where you can figure out this person was killed by this person with this weapon or whatever. And I wish there was like a quicker way to do it, because it does have like a map of the ship, all 4 kind of floors of the ship. And so if you want to go back to a specific person, you're like, okay, look at the ship. Okay, it's up there on the 3rd one. Okay, I have to go over there. And then you pop out your watch, you watch it over again. If you want to hear the thing from the beginning again, you have to go back out, hear it again. So I wish it was a bit more streamlined with that stuff, because then it would make it much more appealing for me to go back in there and try and figure things out. As it stands, I don't have the motivation. As I was saying to Bally, like, every time I think about picking up Return of the Obra Dinn, it feels like homework to me. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. Maybe it is to some degree. Some people will get obsessed by this game and like start writing notes and like really trying to figure it out and pinpoint stuff. And I think one of the things when I was watching Mark Brown's video about it, because obviously it's the type of game that he would love.
I was going to say, obviously he loves it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think it was his like most innovative of the year it came out.
Yeah.
And one of the things he's talking about in there is like, oh yeah, so you can figure out who these guys are from what they're wearing. And I'm like, I don't know, man, all these clothes kind of look the same, because it's like a monochromatic. Yeah, sepia tone. Like the other thing is like a lot of the people just look like weird old bald guys, and I'm like, they're all bald guys. They all look the same. Like I can't distinguish between them all because of the art style to some degree. But Devon, I know you've kind of played some of this as well.
I have.
How do you feel about it? Because all I hear is people raving about it, and I totally get it. Like I totally understand because it is really genius. But I feel like I'm too stupid to play this game, and it feels bad.
See, I had quite a similar experience. I really, really, really enjoyed it when I started playing, but like you explained, very quickly it can become overwhelming because that's spoilers, but not really. This game starts you off in a pretty linear progression, and you start off there are chapters in the game because the whole game is kind of based off of a storybook. What I've always thought they were going for when you mentioned with the art style with all the little white blips and things like that, to me it always kind of reminded me of like in ink drawing and like a book that you would have as a kid, and a lot of the times in the ink pressing there when it's getting copied over and over and over, there are little blotches of paper that come through on the ink.
Totally.
So
I guess that kind of shows in like the sketches you get of the crew as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what it's always reminded me of. But so you start out in chapter, I think 12 or something like that.
I think you start out at the end. I think you say it is linear because you do follow like the next one to the next one. However, you're going backwards through time basically.
Yeah, but the thing is, once you do that first chapter, which is technically the last chapter, from what I remember, pretty much the entire ship opens up to you. And you are in one location.
Yeah, a lot of it does. Like, I think there are sections where I couldn't go down at some point, and then for some reason it was open to me after that. So I think they do block you a little bit. They do,
but for the most part, it just like very, very quickly you become overwhelmed with. Like you said, I think there are 60 characters that you're looking to identify, and
yes,
I think the game is genius in a lot of ways from a game design perspective, but it does become overwhelming. One thing that I found helped me through it, and you talking about it kind of makes me want to go back to it because I always intended to, but never did, is every so often when I'm home visiting parents, I'll actually play a game with my mom. Very, very different game, but I played Red Dead Redemption 2 with her, and she just kind of watched me played it, and how film like that game is. She actually like really, really loved it and really got into the story and characters. And I played that game with her, and I think that's one of those games that I kind of want to bring it out to my roommates now. You know what I mean? Like getting a second opinion.
It almost is like a communal game to some
really
degree,
is.
right?
Yeah, just because it is this sort of mystery novel and almost a puzzle game that having more than one opinion, I think, might be able to make things easier to keep track of, and also getting a second opinion on things is nice because as much as YouTubers might like to stand on their high horse and talk about how, oh yeah, the game's easy or something like that. I would say no. There's certainly certain murders that are pretty easy. It's like, oh, this guy died and there's a gun right next to him. I wonder what happened.
Right.
But a lot of them, it's like, what the hell happened? There are crazy crabs and squids coming out of the walls.
And sometimes, like, you can't really see what's happening in the scene. There's one I remember with a cannon on its side, and it's shot somebody, but, like, the person who has done it, like, you have to go behind, and there's, like, 3 people holding candlesticks, and it's like, oh, this one has gone out, so this was the guy who accidentally set this cannon on fire that ended up accidentally shooting this guy while they're being attacked by a sea monster outside. Like, it's a lot of shit going on in that sense. And, yeah, I think one of the problems is when you're first going through it, it's not super interesting just because you have no information. And so you'll get to a point, you'll be like, okay, don't know who any of these people are. That guy fell down the stairs. Okay, so that's his cause of death, fell down the stairs. Don't know anything else here, can't identify anyone else. So let's move on to the next one. And you move on to the next one. And every single time it's like, okay, I don't know what his name is. I know he was stabbed by a sword. Who was it stabbed him? I have no idea yet. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So when you're first going through, you're pretty much just doing cause of death and not a lot else, unless you get like a really obvious name call out or a cue or something of that matter.
Right, because I think you need, what is it? You need to give them what name they are, what role they served on the ship, and what their cause of death was. I think
no, I think their role is just built into the list of names.
Is it? Okay.
It's basically just who they are and how they were killed. Right. If they were killed by someone else, you have to say who that someone else was, right? So if they like fell down the stairs, that wasn't someone else doing that to them. They just died of their own accord, right? So some of those require multiple layers because it requires you to know who the person who died was, as well as who the person who killed them was. So,
and how many characters are there?
60. Yeah,
60
across the entire ship. And so some of them, as well as like looking at the portraits, you can kind of figure it out, right? Like the people with the big hats standing next to the captain, you can assume that they are the group of like the first mate, the second mate, the third mate, all those types of things. The guy who's giving the command to shoot these guys, he's like the gunner, he's like the one in charge of them. There's the chef appears at one point talking about turning something into food, and so it's like, oh, that's the chef. So there are these cues in terms of their roles within the ship, but then there's like 20 midshipmen, and like they all look the same, and when you get to that point of those really obscure people, that's the point where, looking at it now, I'm like, I could probably get a bunch of these, but do I really want to push through just to find all these other people? And I don't know, because to some degree I'm almost at the start of the game now, right? Because I have everything open to me and I can go there and try and figure it out, but I just don't have the motivation to. I feel bad about that, but also, if you're not enjoying it, then, I don't feel obligated to push myself through something that ultimately is not, like, even when I was solving them, I was like, oh, that's that person. The satisfaction I got wasn't that high, personally. So maybe it'll be different for you, but yeah.
It's interesting listening to you talk about this game, because I said this to you off mic, MBZ, but your opinion sounds a little bit similar to how I felt about Outer Wilds, where...
Yeah.
The industry was crazy hyped on it. It was a game I definitely wanted to try. I maybe, it sounds like I might have even got more out of that game than you got out of this game. I don't know yet, but it kind of like, I reached a point where I was getting real satisfaction working stuff out, but then I just reached a brick wall where I'm like, I have no idea how to get any further, and I feel too stupid for this game. And,
totally.
I have huge respect for what this game is doing. It's doing like this brand new thing that's really cool, but I just can't work it out anymore. It sounds like whenever you've gotten stuck, you've kind of pushed the game away, whereas I kind of jumped onto a guide a bit more with Outer Wilds.
I think the thing with this game is, like, jumping onto a guide doesn't add any satisfaction,
because that is the game.
That's the name of that person. Yeah, they just tell you the name and how they died.
It's hard to... There's no way of bridging the gap between the answer and a clue in the same way you could with Outer Wilds.
Yeah, like I feel like there could be some guides out there that are more clue focused. That would be helpful, I think. Okay. But yeah, otherwise it's just, I think for one of them I went on a forum and someone was like, I don't want to know, just give me a clue, and the person gave them a clue in the comments, and I used that clue and went on to solve who it was. So like stuff like that would be nice.
Yeah. And from the people I've heard online, a lot of people who like Outer Wilds, I think, also like this game. Like,
yes, totally.
They're kind of like sipping your fancy cold brew coffee highbrow level of indie game, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's like highbrow necessarily. I think it's just they're doing something really unique and innovative, and that's going to land for some people, and it's just not going to for others. So yeah, I respect this game a tremendous amount. I don't think I'm going to finish it. I think I'm just going to... The thing is, it's one of those games where you can kind of finish whenever you want, because once you're done, you can go back to the ship with the guy who brought you there and be like, are you done? And you can be like, yeah, I'm done, even if you've only got however many names on the list. It doesn't necessitate it. I think I'd be able to hit credits by just going and talking to him, essentially. Yeah. And in some senses, it reminds me of like Her Story, which is a game that never really had an ending necessarily. You just kind of like, okay, I figured out what's going on here. I feel satisfied. I'm just going to turn it off and I'm done now. And so, yeah, it's one of those types of games.
So there's no way of seeing credits, or do you have to...
No, I think there is in this. Her Story doesn't have that. Like, Her Story is basically, you just go to this place, watch a bunch of videos of this woman, and then when you're satisfied having seen the story and pieced it together in your mind, like, that's when you're done.
Interesting game, basically. Though. So, both of them, really.
Yeah, very, very, for sure. Great. Bally, you have been getting to a game that has probably been long on your backlog, given our history with the series. How's it been going in the world of Guacamelee 2?
Yeah, it's been going good. So I played Guacamelee 1 right back in, I want to say, 2014, 2015, quite early on with the podcast. And I won't even say Guacamelee 1 was... I have a lot of nostalgia for it because I think it might have been the first Metroidvania I played that wasn't a Metroid game.
Yes, because I believe you'd played Fusion and Prime and stuff by that point.
Yeah, and Super Metroid. That was quite early on with the show. And this was like, wow, there are other, developers doing this style of game. And Guacamelee 1 was so fresh and awesome. I mean, it had already been out a while. I think it originally came out in like 2012, right?
It was 2013, I believe. Yeah. That and Brothers both came out in 2013. I remember our first quote-unquote Game of the Year show where we didn't do a huge amount. I gave a shout-out to both Guacamelee and Brothers because I played them both that year. So,
and playing it then, it was like, wow, Metroidvanias can be incredibly linear and do different things. And I loved how this Guacamelee 1 focused on the melee combat, but then used those same melee moves for platforming challenges. And this was just like a really cool idea. And, Guacamelee 2 does all the same things and a little bit more. I think the biggest problem this game has is it doesn't do enough more. It just does genuinely a little bit more. And what I mean by that is you basically get some abilities using the chicken, which for those who don't know is like the morph ball almost.
Yeah, like you just turn into a little chicken running around. In the first game, you basically just used it to get through areas and didn't actually fight anything because you're a chicken. But now you got the power of the chicken, I guess, and you can punch people as chicken.
Now you got some abilities with the chicken and you can fight with the chicken. It's like, well, that's cool, but then beyond that the game almost does nothing new, and that's a real shame because it still has I think the writing is still great. It's still got some fun references to video games and new ideas within that, I guess, but for like an 8 to 9 hour game, it's kind of long, and like the formula doesn't change a ton. Like you get the 4 abilities fairly early on. They don't come too quickly, but it doesn't. I don't know. There wasn't enough creativity in terms of like new ideas. And when you're coming off the back, like having played games like Hollow Knight and Ori and the Blind Forest, and then playing the sequel to Blind Forest, Will of the Wisps, this year, it's like Metroidvanias in my mind have just done some crazy things, both from a gameplay perspective and an artistic and musical perspective, that this game feels very stuck in 2013, 2014. And I feel like you can even see, like, because the design of levels is so specific for those platforming areas, it's basically just a block that they've put a kind of Mexican pattern on. Like, it's very clear to see this is first and foremost like gameplay designed in this way, and then we've just put a like coat of paint over it to like merge it into this world. And
I think that was much more acceptable back, a few years ago when these games were just first popping up, because indie games have evolved a huge amount over the years, and we've seen a lot of evolution. And I think it definitely feels like one of those games where they made it in a bubble, almost like not looking at what any other games in the genre had done, right? Like all these things happened around them. It reminds me of Fallout 4, where like Fallout 3 was a big hit and Bethesda was like, great, let's go make another one of those. And then these things like Witcher 3 come out, and like all these other RPGs that push the medium forward. And then Fallout 4 comes out and people are like, what? Like, you're still doing that thing? And that's kind of what Guacamelee 2 feels like to me. It's like, I mean, yeah, it's really good still. Like, it's an exceptionally fun game and still mechanically really great. It's just
still very solid.
It hasn't really moved forward at all.
Yeah, and like we were just talking about Obra Dinn, and I think the industry, to its credit, gets very excited, arguably even overexcited when it comes to new, fresh ideas in games, and vice versa of that. Like, they tend to not talk a ton about, games that aren't involving the formula much. And Guacamelee 2 flew under the radar, I feel like, massively.
Yeah, barely anyone talked about it when it came out.
Totally. And having played it, I kind of think that's deservedly so. Like, I think it's good that we have an industry that is so excited by new ideas, new experiences to in some part. And yeah, I had a great time with this game. I need to say that. Like, it's still a solid formula.
Guacamelee is amazing. Like, I love it. It was brilliant. But yeah,
and I think the Mexican style, the plot, it's zany, it's silly, the music is great. Artistically, it does look good. It just doesn't, like, coming off the back of games like Hollow Knight and Ori, it's like, wow, we need to like reassess where we're at with Metroidvanias and what's considered, or even a game this year that I felt was fresher was a game like Carrion, where sure, it's not doing anything wild, but it's got some really neat ideas in there, and like the movement and the stealth that's in that game, and just the setting of playing as like this big chunk of horrific meat that's taking out these scientists and people is really cool. And I think in that sense, say Carrion 2 came out and it was more of the same, it'd be cool, but would the industry talk about it much? I don't think so. And I think
exactly.
It's kind of...
I definitely, that's the thing, is like I see a world in which a Guacamelee 2 comes out that is like, has learned from what everyone else has done and is like doing a new thing and is a fresh art style and that type of stuff. Because for me, Drinkbox, they've always been a studio who thrive on new ideas. Like I love Severed. Severed is just a brilliant game, just so fresh and unique and different. And I think this is the first like true sequel they've done, and it shows me like Drinkbox are at their best when they're doing new things and just trying different ideas, for sure.
Yeah. So, like, if you liked one, I would highly recommend. If you've not played either of them, I don't have overly strong feelings about whether you play one or two. I still feel very nostalgic for one. I think it's a cool, fresh experience.
I think the bosses are probably more memorable in one as well.
I would agree there.
Yeah,
in particular, the final boss.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And that actually rolls nicely into the start of this game, which is one nice little thing.
They literally do the what's the Castlevania game before Symphony of the Night that I can't remember, that Richter is anyway. Basically the start of Symphony of the Night is like the end of the previous game, so that thing they do in Guacamelee 2 is just a direct callback to that, essentially. So.
Yeah, there's loads of fun references like that in this game, and that's what Guacamelee is so sort of famous for. So yeah, if you like that, if you like Metroidvanias,
Rondo of Blood.
Right. Do give it a go. It's on Switch. It's on Game Pass. It's on everything. I obviously played it on Game Pass, and yeah, it's a good time, but nothing special. And I think when it came back,
it's a good sale game, I think.
Yeah, when it came out in 2018,
I believe so. Yeah.
And it didn't really make our list, did it, in terms of Game of the Year? Or
I didn't have it anywhere. So, but also I don't think it came out on Switch that year. Maybe that was a thing as well. Because I did play it on Steam, I believe, when it came out.
I played it on Steam as well. I didn't even know it was on Switch, actually.
Yeah, they're both on Switch now, which is very nice. They're good Switch games, I think. So
totally. So yeah, that's Guacamelee 2.
Great. Fantastic. Well, that is going to close us for the first segment. Don't go anywhere, however, because we'll be back after the break talking about Super Mario Sunshine. You will not want to miss it. See you in a bit. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the second half of today's show. It's time to reckon with the beast. The beast that has been on my shoulder, looking over, wanting to drink my blood for many years.
You conquered it, though.
Mario Sunshine. I did indeed conquer it.
Never thought we'd get to this point.
No.
Yes, like a great, Roman gladiator, I have taken my throne upon Super Mario Sunshine. And in fact, Bally, I think I took the crown from you as well, as we found out in the stream. So
you did the trilogy of difficult shines, but
yes,
I did get more shines.
This is true. So let's do a quick shine count. Where's everyone at with Super Mario Sunshine at the moment? How do we do? We've all finished the game. We've all beaten Bowser in his stupid hot tub. How many shines has everybody got?
In it for some reason. I think I'm at about 80 something, maybe 90, but that's not counting blue coins, and I have
So you haven't turned your blue coins in yet, is what you're
No,
telling me.
yeah. I like doing it all at once.
Yeah, it's satisfying, I guess. Just like dumping how many shines on you all at once.
Seeing the number 240 at the top of the screen is just like, ugh. But I have about 170 blue coins, I think, so I'm almost done. Yeah.
Yikes. Bally, what about you?
I didn't get many blue coins at all, and the few I did, I didn't turn in. But I managed to get all the shines in Delfino Plaza and a few more. So I'm sitting on about 75. I think it was 76 after the final boss.
Great. And I believe I'm on 62. Maybe that was after I beat the game. Maybe it's a few more than that. But yeah. So I think let's just kind of top level here. History with Mario Sunshine. When did you first play Mario Sunshine? What are your memories of it from when you were younger? And I might kick this off actually with a comment we got from Justin from Pennsylvania, who said, when I owned a GameCube, I remember that reviews did not praise the original release of Sunshine as highly as the Mario 64 release 6 years prior. Back then, I rented this game just in case I ended up disappointed. Smart move considering how dissatisfied I remember being once I completed my playthrough. I was 13 at the time. Leading up to the release of this new 3D collection, GameCube games skyrocketed in value, and Redditors fondly recalled Sunshine in a similar fashion to how I waxed poetic about Mario 64. I wondered if my original assessment of this title was skewed by being an ignorant teenager, so I was eager to give it a shot. Sunshine sucks. Maybe not unplayable, but I can barely recommend trying it out. I may only suggest playing Sunshine simply so one can see that Nintendo is capable of producing a low-quality platformer. The pedigree that Mario games boast just isn't found here.
Oh my god.
So scathing. Let's kick it off with a scathing remarks. I feel like when I was younger and Bally had Mario Sunshine, I thought it was pretty cool, but it's one of those games that I wasn't drawn to get myself. And I wonder if that's just like the type of games I liked playing at the time, or whether it was something about Sunshine that felt off. Bally, how did you feel when Mario Sunshine came out at the time?
Yeah, I mean, so I got it on launch. I would have been 11 at the time, I think. And it was my first ever Mario platformer, mainline Mario. I think it was one of my first platformers, if not the first platformer.
Well, did you not have the second Mario Land 2 on Game Boy at some point?
Sure, I should say 3D platformer. Yeah, I did.
Yes,
I did have Mario 2 on Game Boy, and so yeah, this was my first 3D mainline Mario, and yeah, I found it very tough as an 11-year-old, but I was kind of stubborn with this game, and I really pushed through, and I ended up getting about 65 to 70 shines. It's just I didn't look up anything online back then, and I didn't know that you had to reach a certain shine threshold with every single level in order to reach Corona Mountain. So I never unlocked Corona Mountain. I never officially beat the game, but I did get a ton of shines across all the levels and in Delfino Plaza. And yeah, I think it's one of those examples of like, yeah, start with a really tough game, and then after that, all 3D platforming feels much more easy. And I think
right, yeah.
At the time,
really high skill ceiling as well, right?
Yeah,
because
I mean, that's
there's just so much available for you in Sunshine to do that as a kid, like trying to learn all these like spin jumps and flips and using FLUDD at the same time, switching between two versions of FLUDD.
Yeah,
like I guess your brain like adapted to it eventually, but boy,
totally. And I really I did feel that way, and I'm interested in your thoughts on like your first 10 shines versus your last 10 shines, MZ, because back when I was a kid, like the first 10 shines were really hard. It was getting used to all those things, the nozzles, the switching, the moving. But then by the end, the secret levels, I wouldn't say they're easy, but like everything feels so much more manageable by the end. There are some exceptions where there's just horrendous design that is unforgivable, but there's lots of difficult but still fair levels in this game that I think get much more easy and more manageable the more you master that moveset. And I think this game is kind of impossible to play without mastering the moveset. Like I think by the time if you beat that final boss and have done all the shines up to it, I think you've mastered Mario Sunshine in my view. Sure, there's a few shines beyond that, but I think this game takes a lot of mastery and skill to work up that moveset in order to beat the main game.
Yeah, I mean, you can look in real time and go back and watch the first stream I did of Sunshine versus the last one, and definitely see a difference there for sure. I will say I felt like a 13-year-old playing it that first stream. I was like, how do any of these things work? This is a nightmare.
I think coming off 64, it just feels like the movement is much faster and like it's very we can get to movement, but it's a lot to take in coming off 64 is want to say.
Totally. Devon, what about you? How did you come into Mario Sunshine originally? What were your thoughts when you were younger?
So I came into Mario Sunshine. I mentioned this on stream when we were finishing. You were finishing up the game the other day, but I came into Mario Sunshine just like I did with Pikmin, as I said earlier in this episode. Back in 2009, Chugga Conroy did an infamous Let's Play of Super Mario Sunshine, and not only was that my introduction to Super Mario Sunshine, it was pretty much my introduction to Let's Playing as a whole. So that was a pretty big.
It was also back in the day where like people actually did play along with people who Let's played games, right? That was kind of the idea behind it to some degree. There is still a guy who comments on my Twilight Princess episode and is like, I made the decision to play this along with you back in the day, and I'm still doing it. And every time you do an episode, I still get it out and continue.
That's hilarious.
I find amazing.
That's amazing. And it was also back in the day. I a lot of positive things to say about Chugga Conroy. I think he's got a great personality, but it was back in the day where Let's Plays were much more walkthroughs than anything else.
Yeah,
it was teaching you how to beat the games and tips and strategies and stuff. It was not as personality based and screaming based as it is today.
Yes.
So yeah, I picked up Mario Sunshine. I believe so. I never owned a GameCube. For perspective, if you want to feel every episode I do of my own show, every time I look at Twitter, I feel old. But if you guys want to feel a little bit old right now, I was born in 1999. So when this game came out, I would have been 3 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So I knew about the GameCube and stuff growing up, but I was a wee kid. That was the first real system that I kind of grew up with and ended up following releases and things like that. So
yeah,
this was not my first Mario 3D platformer. That was Galaxy when that came out. But this was actually the first GameCube game that I ever owned as well. Because as I'm sure probably everyone listening to this show knows, the Wii had GameCube backwards compatibility. So this was the first game.
The secret panel at the top where you can plug in GameCube controllers.
Yes, yeah.
And somehow still to this day you can plug in GameCube controllers to your current gen Nintendo system.
I know.
Because that's how that controller has persisted over time. It's nuts, man.
It really is nuts. But yeah, I picked this game up then. I felt the exact same way. I remember struggling on the first level, like Bianco Hills. This game has an incredibly difficult moveset to master. But I kept persisting. I don't know if it was one of those things where you're a kid and you play a game and you just keep going when you probably wouldn't as an adult. But
yeah,
I got pretty good at the game, and I adore Mario Sunshine. I think it's probably the most flawed Mario game ever released, certainly the most flawed 3D Mario game ever released, but I think there's a lot of charm in it, and I really, really love it, and it's easy for me to go back to, probably because of the nostalgia. Some of those missions don't annoy me as much, more just because I'm like, wow, I remember doing this as a kid and hating it. So it's kind of fun to go back to and be like, I hate it now, but at least it's easier.
Right. Like, it's also like there is this weird, and I found this when I was playing through, that Mario Sunshine is one of those games, and there are a few of these where I know so much about it despite having never played it myself.
Yes, yeah, I think so.
Because like it's such a popular game for people to let's play or stream or whatever, there is this cultural osmosis around Sunshine that I have just, my brain is weird. I know things about video games I have never played and will likely never play.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
So Sunshine is one of those where I just know everything and what to do for the most part. And so, I found myself going to these levels being like, oh, it's this level, like sighing as if I've done it before, when in reality I've never played it myself, just have the knowledge of it. So
I will say I ended up doing that more than I anticipated on this playthrough. I'd go to a shrine.
I tried to keep count of like how many times I saw the name of a level or like knew what I had to do in that level.
Yep.
I was like,
oh,
this
God.
one
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
I think that's a big factor for sure. So in terms of coming back to the game now, I think we're all playing on the 3D collection, right?
Yes, yeah.
How do you feel about it today? Does it hold up? Has it gotten worse in your eyes? What do you feel about Super Mario Sunshine? Bally, let's start with you.
I definitely have a lot of nostalgia for this game. I think that's hard to avoid when it's your first ever 3D Mario. I think that it holds up a lot better than I thought. Like I'd watched the Beast crew, you know, absolutely murder this game and struggle so much, and I was thinking, God, is Mario Sunshine really this bad? I'm worried that this is going to be awful when I come back to it. And honestly, I had an absolute blast just picking up this game and blasting through like 3 or 4 shines in a row. Just there were a handful of levels I struggled with, but honestly, not to blow my own trumpet, but I really did master the moveset and I felt really comfortable. And on top of like the fact that I think it's a really good version of the game on this 3D collection, and stuff like the camera doesn't bother me much.
And it's getting better as they continue to patch it and like add in GameCube support now, as well as having inverted camera controls back in the game, because they removed those and then did put an option in to put them back. The widescreen is really nice for sure, and it looks very crisp handheld on the screen.
So as much as like I can't defend that there's just a handful of shines that we can get to that are just awfully designed and really surprising that they're in there, I think generally the level design is very good. Like the just visually, some of the worlds are just the right size. They feel like really just like a sense of exploration. They're much larger than the 64 levels, and I love the whole Sunshine aesthetic. I love the holiday theme. I think it's fantastic, and I really had a great time with this game. And I like to think that without any nostalgia tinted goggles on, I would have had a good time anyway. But I must admit, I think the nostalgia combined with already knowing the moveset made this a really enjoyable experience. So I can totally see someone coming in without the moveset, having played games like Galaxy or maybe Odyssey, and thinking, wow, this is tough, like, and finding those first 5 to 10 hours much harder. But hopefully people who haven't played it before find the latter 10 hours, not 10 hours, last 5 hours, last 4 hours, you know, a bit easier, because I had a great time, honestly, and I think a lot of it's held up well. Okay.
Devon, how about you? How do you feel today?
I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head, Bally. I have an immense, a crazy amount of nostalgia for this game. I think in the last email that you just read, I probably feel similarly to this game that person did about Mario 64. I mean, this game just really opened a lot of doors for me in a lot of ways. It's I think pretty much impossible to look through that nostalgia bias for me. But I'll still say I had a blast going back to this game. As I said, you know, some of those shines and a little bit higher of a percentage of those shines than I remember definitely gave me a headache, and more that it's just less so now, you know, coming to the game already having mastered the moveset, as we've already talked about, you know, less being a difficulty thing and more just being like, oh god, it's this one. This one's just not fun.
Yeah,
you know.
Exactly.
It was more of that for me, but I still think this is a really fun game in 2020, and I think more than anything, Mario Sunshine is just like freaking interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, they're, you know, as mixed reception as this game has, and rightfully so, I think in a lot of ways, there are some things that Mario Sunshine does better than any other game in the series. I truly feel. And one of the things is the movement. I think maybe they start things off a little bit too difficult to begin with, but just having
I think it's just because they dump it all on you at once, right? Like, it's like, boy, there's so many options for what I have to do here, let alone, like, later on introducing the rocket nozzle and the other nozzle to, like, enhance his moveset and change it a little bit. But you kind of have the entire... It's like starting Super Metroid with the screw attack and the spin jump and, like, the wave beam all at once, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Comparing that to 64, it's just a crazy number of changes. And I remember the instruction manual so clearly with, like, a double page of all the moves listed and thinking, oh my god, this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Very, very complicated.
But I think that's really one of the highlights of the game to me, because once you get a mastery of that moveset, people talk about, they like to reminisce on Mario 64 and how, you know, Peach's Castle is kind of like a playground for Mario's moveset. Well, Delfino Plaza is one of those areas that I just don't even get really that tired running around in. It's just fun to control Mario in this game, and that's pretty amazing. I think God, probably next to Odyssey, this is probably the best controlling that Mario's ever been.
I totally
in some
agree
ways,
on
it
that
surpasses.
point.
Cool. Well, not to be the Debbie Downer here, but I feel like And, I've got to balance out the scales.
That's true. I will say, I don't think you hated this game. We mentioned it on stream. I think you enjoyed it more than you thought you would.
So, okay, let's talk about that.
I think MBZ picked up the moveset, and from the point at which he picked up the moveset, he could obviously see the flaws, but I think you suffered less with the flaws, and from that point you're like, hey, this is still a bad game, but I'm managing it, but I'll let you say that.
Sure. So I look at this from two perspectives. One is I could have played this without having streamed it, and I think I would have come into this conversation way more negative. I think the experience of streaming this game just made it more enjoyable, right? For one thing, there is something about Mario Sunshine that creates fucking stupid moments.
Yes.
Every stream I did of this game, I had a clip that I could clip out to Twitter and was like hilarious, right? Either me losing my mind about how awful the controls were in a certain section, or me like doing a ridiculous thing where I'm wall jumping between these things I should have died like long ago, or just like fucking up the lily pad at the very last second, right? Those are golden moments of like streaming that game. But I think had I knocked my head against the wall of some of those levels without an audience and without people around to give me tips and help and things like that, I would have been a lot more negative about it. And so I do think that has to be caveated, is like, partially, most of my enjoyment of this game is because I basically streamed the whole thing. And that always will change your perspective on whatever game you're kind of going into it with. So yeah, I do think that I eventually understood it and like felt that it did feel good. However, I do think it's slightly too sensitive, and I don't know if it's the 3D collection that has changed it slightly or something, but I remember when I first picked it up, I was like, well, there are times where you don't want him to do the weird backflip, and he's almost standing still, and he'll just still do it. And I'm like, I don't understand why he's doing that. There is a little bit too much of a light touch to the way Mario will sometimes jump, especially when you have momentum, like going into a jump with momentum and then flipping back. Sometimes it's really easy to get that to work. Sometimes it happens when you don't want it to, and then sometimes it just won't come out, and you're like,
I noticed with you the backflip would come out almost all the time without you even meaning to.
Totally. It felt like an accidental jump that I didn't want to happen but would happen anyway. And so there is a little...
I actually know what you're saying there. I had never noticed that as a kid, but replaying it this time, there is a huge window from when... So for people who don't know what we're talking about, it's like the side flip jump where it's been in every Mario game since 64, where when you turn Mario in a 180 degree direction, when you flip around, you do that kind of side backflip thing. And in this game, more so than any other Mario game, there's gotta be like a 2 or 3 second window where after you're standing still, you're not in the animation of turning around. If you hit the A button, you still do that side flip jump. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Totally. And we have a comment from PR Billy who said, first thing that I noticed is that Mario controls very fast and loose. This feels great for traversing the massive world areas, but alternatively feels awful for precise platforming. That's where FLUDD comes in. It allows you to correct any mistakes you make with Mario's wobbly controls. This is a workaround for most areas, but makes me hate the FLUDDless shines. Doesn't really help that if you get a game over in these areas, it kicks you all the way back to Delfino Plaza instead of the start of that level. And yeah, like that, totally... The moments where I was losing my mind at Mario backflipping incorrectly was those FLUDDless levels, because I didn't have another option to correct myself, and like I would accidentally go off the side of a random block, and it would just be a real, I wouldn't say frustration necessarily, but it's just like it feels like this could have been tightened up a bit, especially for a remaster like this. It makes me wish that this game had got the Wind Waker HD treatment, which it's a separate thing, but
that's for sure.
Hey, it's here in its original glory in some senses. Cool. So we just get into like the levels themselves. I think it's a good place to start with Delfino Plaza, because that is like, as I was saying, there were I went back and forth on Mario Sunshine to some degree in terms of there was a few shines I did off stream where I was just playing handheld and I was like just jumping around Delfino Plaza and I'm like, man, this kind of does feel good. I don't know, am I going to end up liking this game? And then as soon as I streamed the next few levels, I was like, actually, no. I was about to turn a corner, and then I was like, oh, all of these shines in this level are terrible, and I don't want to do any of them, and it just feels bad. So there was that kind of turn, but I do stand by, I think Delfino Plaza might be the best hub area in a Mario game overall. When you think about like 64 is cool, but it is kind of limited in terms of the kind of linear, like kind of almost closed-in spaces of the castle, and you also have Galaxy, where it's not really that interesting to traverse. It's a very expanded level select to some degree, and then Galaxy 2 like shrinks it even more so. You're just like one orb in the sky, basically, with literally a level select menu. And then Odyssey doesn't necessarily have that, right? Because you're just jumping from world to world for the most part. So yeah, weirdly, Delfino Plaza might just be the best space to move around in. How do we feel about it as a place, as a area where there are a lot of secrets and things like that?
Devon?
Sure, I would agree 100%. I think this is definitely the best hub world in any of the 3D Mario games. I mean, Peach's Castle is definitely a close second. There's a lot of coolness and nostalgia with that one, you know, being a kid and finding out that you can find a new level just by jumping into a wall that doesn't look like anything else, it's just a dead end. That was very cool. But all of the hidden shines and stuff like that in Delfino Plaza are really awesome. One thing I do kind of wish, and this is a complaint with the game in general, although it's also a positive, which is strange, which I wish there was a little bit more variety in the theming, but at the same time, that theme is so consistently fun and interesting, and they find different ways to vary it up throughout the world that it really does gel and feel cohesive. But yeah, I think Delfino Plaza is awesome. Like I said, it gives you all the nozzles later in the game, so you have every tool at your disposal to play around with Mario, including Yoshi, and I'm sure we'll get into Yoshi later. But yeah, I think Delfino Plaza is one of the strongest parts of this game.
Yeah, I totally love Delfino Plaza. I agree that, like, you know, Peach's Castle, it's hard to ignore how iconic it obviously is, but I think Delfino Plaza and the theming of Delfino is just so great. Like, Delfino is almost like an Italian style, and like it's got those inspirations in like the architecture, but then it's kind of putting an Italian architecture in a tropical setting, which to my knowledge doesn't really exist in the world, because obviously Italy's not a tropical setting, so it's like a really unique setting in that sense. But as a place to explore, it's so nice, and like running on the tiled rooftops and hearing his pitter-patter feet on the tiles and this sort of thing, and platforming around, and it's a good size. It's not too big, it's not too small. It's obviously much bigger than Peach's Castle. It's an incredibly nostalgic place for me. I was really gutted they didn't do any reference to it in Odyssey. Personally, I'd love to see that in the future.
I know. Well, I've still got Odyssey 2 to do that.
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic hub world and really sets the tone for like what this game does, both mechanically but also theming wise.
Yeah, and I think it's built around the moveset in a lot of ways. There are lots of long stretches where you can do the kind of body slide with the water to like get around places quickly. And a lot of the buildings are close together, so it helps you learn the wall jump. Or even if one isn't, then it's a good place for you to like do your kind of flip jump to wall jump to FLUDD to then get on the top of it. It's kind of Matraya writes in about this, about how it kind of like helps you learn the game, but Matraya says, Delfino Plaza is a good hub world. The music is great. It has lots of secrets, and I think you unlock worlds and stuff to do at a very good rate. Similar to Mario 64, you can use it as a mostly safe space to practice Mario's tricks, or just zoom to another world, which is 100% how it should be, and for some reason, hub worlds got a lot worse after Sunshine. However, unlike 64, the game does not take any kind of advantage of the hub world. When talking about Mario 64, I noted my favourite thing about the game is the freedom it provides the player. You can beat the game doing just about anything you want. It's amazing how we went from such freedom to, you need to get these specific 49 shines and all others don't help you actually beat the game. Unlike in 64, if there is a star or shine or even an entire world that's annoying to you, you can't just skip it and do something else. And boy, about half the shines fit that criteria for me. Furthermore, secrets and blue coin challenges not really contributing towards beating the game doesn't give the player the same incentive to go and find these secrets or do these extra little challenges like in 64 Castle. And I totally felt that, right? Like I had no incentive to get the blue coins because they are just pointless, like they're collectibles for the sake of collectibles. And similarly, there is almost a hollow feeling of collecting a shine in Delfino Plaza with the realization that it's not actually going to help you further your quest to finishing the main game, right?
Yeah.
And especially like when I think of the first time I played Mario 64, I barely touched Tiny Huge Island. I don't think I got a single star in that level, but I could still finish the game not even touching that level. And so it's a real bummer that some of this stuff is just like, they really restricted it back, and they said, actually, no, we want you to see these shines. And to some degree, I think it's because, like, there's not as much diversity or, like, worlds in Sunshine. Me and Bally were talking a little bit about this before we started, of, like, it's like half the number of worlds versus 64. And so, you know, what you do in those worlds, the number of shines and kind of the diversity of it, it really feels like, you know, either the budget was low or they had less time to do it to just, like, get as much variety in this game. So they do funnel you down a path much more so.
I think it's one of the worst aspects of the game in that sense. And obviously, like I said before, it's something I never realized growing up playing this game. But I think if you, like, when we're going to talk about some of the worst shines in the game, I think those worst shines in the game become a lot less worse if you knew you didn't have to do them. Like, if you knew you could think, right, I'm stuck on this one, I don't like it much, I'll move to this other one, like you can in 64. I think that would have been a huge strength for this game, and might leave that a more positive memory in many people's minds, like looking back at this game and think, I never really got stuck on a shine, because if I got stuck, I just moved on, got some more shines, unlocked Corona Mountain, beat the game, and had that satisfaction. And it's frustrating this game doesn't have that flexibility with the structure.
Definitely. Yeah, it does feel just restrictive in a way. But to some degree, for me, it was almost like, well, I know what I have to do, right? Like, there's no getting around this. I will do all these in a row. And so it was almost ritualistic in terms of, let's do this until we find that fucker Shadow Mario, and then I'm taking him down, right? So, yeah, to some degree, like, it does almost keep you with momentum. But, like, as younger people trying to get through this game, if you got to a stumbling block and a shine was just there and it was too hard, what can you do?
That's
right?
true.
Like, you have to finish it.
Yeah, that's very true.
And like, there are some of these levels where the worst shines are like the first or second one. And then after that, that's the thing I would say generally about this game, right? Is my top level thoughts would be, this game is either the hardest Mario game or the easiest Mario game. There's no in between, right? Like, you either have shines where it's like, oh, just go get these 8 red coins in this reef. It's not super difficult. What was the point in that? Or it is the fucking hotel, where the hell do I go? Yoshi, this pineapple, secret doors, hidden entrances, booze, unlocking rooms, like fucking going back sandbird, like
secret level.
All those types of levels versus like, oh, just go and spray off these 10 Pianta, they all have lava on them and they're all just kind of about, and you have 3 minutes to do it.
I mean, I think 64 had that diversity where obviously the hardest levels in Sunshine are much harder than 64, I'd argue, but 64 had a bit of go do this one thing, get a star versus, you know.
It has a bit of that, but I do think 64 has more like medium difficulty stars as well, right? Like, I don't think that there are any medium difficulty shines in Sunshine. Either they're bullshit hard, or they're really annoying, or they're just dumb easy stuff. Like the one with the sunflowers on the beach, what the fuck is that shine? You know, like, it's nothing. It's like, just spray these fucking sunflowers and then like stomp some turtles. I get it's not good, you know. So, should we get into some of these specific levels then? Let's kick off with Bianco Hills, which is the first level. And the thing that I will note straight out the bat is you fight this fucking piranha thing so many goddamn times at the start of this game. Not only is it the first thing you get off the airstrip, you then do it again to get to the first level. You then do it as the first boss of the first level, and then you fight a different piranha on the second shine of the first level. So
look, if you're going to put him in Mario Kart Double Dash a year later, you need people to remember him. So you got to put him.
You have to build up his brand identity.
Right,
yeah,
exactly. You can't just pop up once.
Yeah, I mean, Bianco Hills is a fine level. I think it is definitely. It's introductory in the sense that there aren't really any pits to fall into, right? If you fall from a height, you do fall into water. And I think, actually, Sunshine doesn't really do the 64 thing that much.
It's not really got pits anywhere other than the secret
level.
No,
it doesn't. No. But what it does do, for the most part, is the thing that I actually don't like as much, which is, you know, this is especially bad in Rico Harbor, but, like, if you are up really high and it's taking you ages to get there, you make one mistake, you fall down, That's true. Boy, you have to do it all over again, climb all the way up there, find your route back to
again
the top.
It's rewarding people who have mastered the skill set who won't fall down, and then being incredibly punishing to those who haven't quite yet and fall down. Like it's overly punishing for not having mastered the skill set rather than giving you a bit of a helping hand, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
What is your guys' favorite level in this game?
Ooh.
I think Bianco Hills is pretty good overall, just as a, it's not too bullshit, right? Like, I think every other level...
I like it as a level, but I'm not a fan of majority of the missions in Bianco Hills, which is what takes it down the tier list for me. I think you mentioned Rico Harbor. I actually really like Rico Harbor.
I love Rico Harbor. It's between Rico Harbor and Gelato Beach for me.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
Peanut Park as well.
Look, I don't think I really quote unquote like any of these levels, but the best of a bad bunch, Bianco Hills I'd probably choose. And I think the interesting thing about Bianco Hills is that it is split, right? Like it has that first area with the windmills in it, and then it has the second area.
A lot of the Sunshine levels do that though.
Yeah, for sure. Like they definitely have. It is a much bigger space, and I think they use that space relatively well in that first area. Where like some of the shines, you have to go over to the cave in the corner, and one of them you have to bring PT Piranha down from the other side, so he flies over near the windmill area. Yeah, it definitely like uses that space smartly with all the different kind of shines that you have, while also kind of focusing on, I guess, just getting from place to place more so than other levels in some senses.
I do think that's something that Sunshine does well, that kind of, you have these two sections of the level, because like you were saying, you have that kind of village section of Bianco Hills and then the outside area. A lot of the levels do that. In Peanut Park, you have the little beachside area, and then the majority of levels inside the actual theme park. You have the hotel and the outside of the hotel in Serena Beach. Even in Pianta Village, there's the underside of the village that you spend a little bit of time in. So it's kind of cool having those secondary areas.
And Nintendo like to do this with their kind of design generally. You think about like...
Sure. They did it in 64 too.
Sure, yeah. Like Link to the Past has like the dark world and the light world, right? Like there are these the ways in which they kind of split up their design is interesting. Although I wouldn't quite say it's the same here, but it is like, I guess, a riff on a similar idea to some degree.
The closest thing I can think of in 64 is, there's probably a couple of other areas I'm forgetting about, but when you go inside the pyramid and Shifting Sandland, I think is the name of that level, and then inside the volcano and God, I don't remember what that one's called. But yeah, similar kind of concept that's more expanded in Sunshine, I think.
Are there any shines that stand out to you in this first level? I think the first kind of floodless one is okay. Like, it definitely gets you used to the concept. Even like as impatient as I was being about it with the moving blocks, it's trying to teach you, like, you can't run through this, man. Like, you got to slow down. You can't just kind of go for it the whole time, because you will mess up.
The second floodless level, which is in Bianco Hills, I actually think is one of the tougher ones in that game. That's the one with the blue and red flipping panels that kind of got later refined in other Mario games.
Yeah. It's even more patience with that one.
Yes.
Sure. Like. I was like, okay, let's just, wait even longer and just keep going back and forth slowly. And I think that's one of the things, is sometimes those jumps and the camera and like how that affects how far the jump is to some degree, or your kind of view of the character. I find myself doing those secret shines, having the camera as zoomed out as possible.
Yeah.
There was one level where I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do top down. I'm just going to play Link to the Past top down Mario.
No, it really does help. Yeah, I do that.
Yeah, to some degree it does help for lining stuff up, except for the levels where you have to do wall jumps, of course, where that is much more a different kind of angle you have to go for. But yeah, I don't know. There's nothing that stand out about. I think it is just the level where you fight PT Piranha a bunch. You fight him.
I really like his fights generally. Actually, like the first fight.
Yeah, the fight that haunts us from when we were younger is that one where you have to get him over and you have to spray him in the sky and get him down and then jump on his belly. And I remember you playing that when we were younger, Bally, and being like, I can't do this. This is too hard. This is the hardest thing in the world.
It was the same thing for me. That was the first roadblock I remember hitting with Mario Sunshine.
Yeah. But going back to it now, I didn't find it tough
it's
at all.
pretty simple.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a great fight. I really enjoyed the first fight where he's in the windmill and the build up to him, and like you get there, and you got this windmill with vines and thorns poking out of it. Like I just think all that design's nice.
I agree.
And
That's probably the best fight of the game, I think.
Yeah, and this PT Piranha character who it's like throwing up this brown goop that you have to like spray away and avoid, and it's really incorporating FLUDD in a big way in like the first main boss fight of the game. And I really liked all that. Like we can talk about FLUDD separately maybe, but I really like FLUDD generally, and I think his incorporation with using it to take on bosses is really enjoyable actually. And I thought like filling up PT Piranha, he falls over, you ground pound him, like that's a really nice gameplay loop. Honestly, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it just does a bit too much of the same for me, right? I think it's just returning to these similar things, like even though it feels like it does feel like an EAD Tokyo boss to some degree, of like, okay, we've done the same boss again with a bit of a twist to it, right? And that's the same with the second shine in this level, which feels like, oh, we've done the kind of the same boss that you've done twice already, and then we can just make it a little bit harder because these choco balls are going to just start rolling down as well to make it a little bit trickier. But it's not really still not that hard. And so I think that's another thing that makes me feel that this game had a truncated kind of design and kind of timeline, just because there's so many repeated things.
Well, I think that's basically been confirmed. I think just we mentioned this on stream the other day, but I think just like Wind Waker, there was something like, I remember reading recently, don't quote me on this number because it might be wrong, but something like 5 worlds that were cut from this game, and I mean that's a significant portion of worlds.
I know for sure there was one dungeon that was cut from Wind Waker.
Yes.
That was pretty well known, but then people are like, we'll put that dungeon back
in,
and
they
were like, well, we used those ideas in different Zelda games after that, so it wouldn't really make much sense.
I would imagine the worlds that were partially in development for this game probably couldn't be reused in other Mario games, but still, I mean, there are certain bits of this game. Obviously, the blue coins is kind of the prime example, and in particular, that goopy piranha plant thing. I mean, you fight him. I think the number is literally 6 times. It's 5 or 6. I can't remember off the top of my head. You fight almost every boss more than once. It's rough. It's one of the weakest elements of this game, I think.
Totally. And I think speaking of like repeated enemies you fight, let's talk about Shadow Mario in this game.
Oh boy.
Bowser Jr. as he was revealed to be. Maybe this is a point where we can talk about the story in the frame around Mario Sunshine, but you do fight him as the last or the 7th shine in every world that you do, which I hadn't realized until I was going through this for the first time, because he does show up a bunch, and I just never really realized, oh, it's always that triggers the next thing to open, or him in the plaza with the next nozzle or whatever. Like that's kind of the beat that moves you on to the next story portion or whatever.
Right. Well, those we were talking about some of the shines being required. That is what's required. You don't have to do the 8th mission in every world, but you need to beat Shadow Mario in every single level to open up Chrono.
That's kind of the lock and key design almost, is must defeat this guy. And I think one of my most frustrating things is like, if you lose him, he's a fucking pain in the ass to find again. Like he sometimes he'll just go on a route, but then he'll change it. He'll go backwards on that same route halfway through. And then there was one point in the park level where I was like, the fuck is he? And he was just back at the beginning again. And I was like, oh my god, like it really annoying just to try and find him. I will say, I think part of the reason I found this game easier is, Devon, you gave me the greatest hack in the world, which is the shotgun blast, the water shotgun blast. And in the Rico Harbor version of this fucking Shadow Mario, I do him in like 5 seconds, less than that probably. 4 seconds, you're like blah, 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 blast, dead before he even gets up the first railing. And I was like, holy shit, dude, this is what speedrunners do with this game, right? It's like they just must abuse the shit out of that move, because it's so powerful. It uses up loads of your water. But
I think that's the downside, is if you use up all your water to go and get water and then come back to him, that's a very easy way of losing him. Like, so you have to really nail it.
And because that was my way of beating Shadow Mario, because I was like,
I think that's why you kept
follow
losing
him forever.
Him,
I kept losing him because I had to go fill my water up again, and then it was annoying. But, like, this was the first game where they had voice acting for Mario characters, and it has never come back again.
No, I wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder why. So Justin from Pennsylvania, very strongly worded thoughts here about the story of Mario Sunshine. He says, the story is idiotic. These islanders cannot tell the difference between Mario and this liquid celestial being. Furthermore, how could anyone hope for Nintendo to ever attempt to use voice acting ever again in any of their games after this monstrosity? It doesn't surprise me that Zelda Breath of the Wild was a disappointment from a voice acting perspective after hearing this. Peach is from a royal bloodline. Somehow, she is the most ditzy-sounding, stereotypical blonde. I am your mama? I don't know, Peach. You tell me. Did you throw Bowser a lay? You cannot recall a roll in the hay with a large reptilian creature with a spiked shell and fire breath? One would think Peach's royal status would afford her with world-class education. Instead, she is this mindless, hollow person, incapable of rational thought. It is no wonder she must be escorted by the Chancellor at all times.
They're just warming up for the Mario film. It's going to be great.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah boy.
This is the warm-up.
I mean, like, here's the thing. Who fucking cares about the story in these games, right?
Exactly how I feel.
It's something that is just...
I think it's fun. It's just like flavor for the world, and it's silly, and I like it personally. Yeah.
I just kind of like how everyone's sort of a dick in this game. Even the Piantas, most of them are just kind of assholes, like the ones that are supposed to help you out.
Like, you look like that guy, we're going to lock you up.
Yeah.
You're kind of used to hero worship of Mario,
Absolutely.
right? Like in 64, like the Toads love him, or I guess some of them are a bit weird around him. But for the most part in Mario games, he's like the golden god, like nothing can assail him.
Sure, Paper Mario is the kind of prime example of that.
Totally, and he rolls up to this island, and they're like, hey, we're going to throw you in prison, and we don't like you. We think you're a bit shifty looking.
Well, the locals don't really care about Peach being taken by Bowser. That's the fun thing. It is the Toads and Toadsworth who's like, you need to go save her, Mario, And I think that changes the entire dynamic of the world, where the locals just shrug their shoulders at the whole situation.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I don't really think it detracts for me at all. It's just one of those things of the time. The thing that annoys me the most is audio balance, which these days games are much better at shifting between cutscene volume and in-game volume. Back then, it was a nightmare. I remember playing Prince of Persia on GameCube, and I had to like fucking blast my volume for the cutscenes, and then as soon as it would change back to gameplay, my TV would like blow out the speakers just because they didn't understand how to balance audio, and it was a real pain. And yeah, Sunshine definitely suffers from that a little bit and you can definitely tell when you watch these cutscenes that these haven't really gotten the full upgrade.
Yeah, that's for
because you can't, it's like really hard to go back and recreate that stuff. So when you see a lot of these remakes happening, cutscenes are often almost preserved in their much worse looking state, and much blurrier, and don't have the same crispness as the rest of the game does when you're playing it. So yeah, Rico Harbor, let's talk about it. It's a cool level, I think, conceptually. I think it just doesn't land it in terms of the amount of times that you have to be high up somewhere to get something, and then if you mess up, you have to get back there again. Like, it's the combination of these really thin rails mixed with squid guys, mixed with fucking wind that's just going to ram into you. And then, like, there are some later shines which I think are not necessary for, finishing the game, but there is one in particular with Yoshi
that one's
and
terrible.
Moving platforms.
One of the worst in the game.
Is just awful. And I'm so glad I didn't have to do it, because it's like the ultimatum of the worst parts of this game. A companion who disappears not only just by touching water, but if you run out of time, just because he's going to evaporate. The idea of being high up, and then if you fall down, having to get all the way back over there. And then like an area you need to get to that is really unclear about how to actually get there, and you don't even know if the rocket nozzle will work or not. Like it is just this triumvirate of bullshit things that make the worst parts of Mario Sunshine.
Can we talk about, by the way, how Yoshi's juice, when when you spray Yoshi's liquid or juice on an enemy, it turns them into a colored platform with a little cartoon face on the side of it.
Yes, yeah. Are there lore implications here?
I
don't know.
idea.
Do we need to get animal services involved? I'm not sure. Yeah, Yoshi, his implementation is not ideal. I do think...
No, it's not quite Galaxy 2.
No, I do think it's nice that he's there and it adds a bit of variety to the game, but ultimately he is like He's like a power-up from Mario 1 or the original Mario games, but worse, in the sense that you don't even need to be hit for him to disappear. He's on a timer and will disappear.
The timer is such a weird decision that I don't
really
see the need for it in any sense. It feels so strange.
I think there are some of those that pop up in Galaxy. Do they not do timers on like the Fire Flower?
So the Fire Flower has a timer. I believe the Ice Flower has a timer. There are a couple of power-ups that
but you never lose Yoshi in relation to those timers. It's just the brief ability, as it were. You know.
Oh,
you lose him if you run out of juice, right?
I'm talking about Galaxy 2. Sorry, the timers. The timer for like the fire thing is strictly the fire thing, and when it runs out, you don't lose Yoshi.
No,
you just,
exactly.
You just get the fire
we were saying
thing
that
again.
Mario's power-ups, not just Yoshi's power-ups.
Yeah, Mario's power-up. So basically, when you get the Fire Flower, it's on a timer. I think if you get hit, you still maintain the fire ability.
You do.
I got
so
you.
it's
Right.
Yes, so it's a little bit different in that sense. However, yes, Yoshi, not great. Also, like the lengths they go to put him in these particular. I think I wouldn't be so mad about it if it wasn't that every level you use him in, he is specifically designed to be like the most fucking annoying. It's the most annoying implementation of Yoshi.
Getting the fruit is a pain too. It's not difficult, but it's just time consuming.
Yes, you can imagine levels where it's fun to move around as him, and you've got plenty of fruit around, and like it's paced well. Whenever he is used, it's either for those stupid bullshit like go all over to this place and take forever, or it is even longer, like getting to that secret level where you have to wait for the boat, go under the thing, so wait on the platform, take in the plant, the fruit. It's just not well thought out generally. But do you have any other thoughts on Rico Harbor as a space, as a place?
I love it. I think it's like, go ahead, Devon.
Well, I just think it's the level that maybe has the most variety of any part of Mario Sunshine. It's another one, I didn't even think about it when I was talking about how a lot of these levels have secondary areas. The secondary area of Rico Harbor, I would say, is kind of those railings and girders and stuff up top. I enjoy the blooper, like riding on the blooper segments.
Yeah,
where
I think blooper riding is good fun.
It is one of those rare things where people complain about it, of like, you know, if you're getting the shine and you accidentally miss it and then you die. But I actually really enjoy the process of riding those bloopers.
It's like
they're very fun.
The slide almost in 64, but sped up and on the water. And it actually looks really nice. Like, we've not really talked about the graphics of this game.
The
but
water
effects generally, I think, look really nice in this game. Blooper racing looks nice. Like, I think it looks good, but more widely, I think Rico Harbor, like when you take the idea of we're going to make like a container port and then essentially do that, but almost make it a jungle gym. I think they really nail that aesthetic well. And I agree that the idea of falling down from a great height into the water is not much fun if you keep falling off, but there's a real satisfaction when you kind of nail the jungle gym aspect and, you know, get that shine right at the top. Like, I think there's some decent shines in there. No, and I do enjoy the big boss.
I think you would be more positive on Rico Harbor and BZ if you went back and played it now, just because you have a better mastery of those controls.
Just because I was worse at the game, basically.
I think it's surprising they put it as the second world in this game. I think the jungle gym nature of it suggests it should have been later, because I think there is some genuine satisfaction in doing it well if you don't fall in.
Yeah, I also do think there's a bit of clarity that is needed on some of those. Like, you were directing me how to get the one in the cage, Bally, and I thought I just had to keep going up and up on these obstacle courses.
You can do either, or you can go in the top or the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, can you?
It's much easier. If you fall off with the rocket nozzle, you can just go from the bottom. You don't have to.
Yeah, so that's the route. Again. That's what Bally was telling me to do, was to get the rocket nozzle and up from the bottom.
Because the rocket nozzle is halfway up. But then once you get the rocket nozzle, you can keep going to the top, but if you fail getting to the top, you just jump into it from underneath.
Yeah, so I guess if I didn't know that, I would probably have even worse experience, because I would have tried to go all the way to the top and try and nail all those things higher up for sure. Yeah, that is nice, at least, that there's multiple ways in order to get.
It's very unclear that you can just rocket from the bottom. I totally agree on that idea.
Yeah, that does feel like an almost like cheat, like if you know it, you know it.
It's like a run to this point and you will miraculously teleport to this other side of the level.
I will say one of my least favorite parts about this game control-wise, one of the few things I'll complain about control-wise, and this level introduces them, is it's when you're climbing, you're either climbing, uh, vertically, or you're climbing on like upside down, or you're climbing up a wall. And the reason that it bothers me is because Mario has a move where he can like same move from Mario World, I think, where he can kind of like bang the gate that he's climbing on and flip to the other side of the platform.
Oh,
But
yeah. Which button to press for those was
so
driving me insane.
frustrating, and
for horizontal
it's
versus
different for
vertical.
horizontal versus vertical, exactly, and it trips me up every single time. I played this game for countless hours, and I still die.
It's like you get underneath the Pianta village, and you're like going through all this shit, and you're like, oh fuck, which one? It's like a press of it's like a 50-50 on Millionaire of like, which am I going to press? Is it going to make me fall to my death, or am I going to get the shine? Like, it's boy, I really wish that stuff was a bit more consistent. So for talk about movement, there are a couple of other comments we had about movement that I think kind of reiterate something, but there's also one point that I want to bring out of these two comments. Joycey said, I felt like the movement is the most fun out of the original 3D trilogy. It's fun to just move around and traverse everywhere with FLUDD. The controls aren't the most airtight, but having FLUDD kind of remedies that by allowing you to correct yourself, which makes it work super well. I adore the environments and the atmosphere the game created. Delfino Plaza is such a great hub world and still remains in my mind, despite only playing the game through twice. I think that kind of echoes a lot of what we said already. And then Matraya also says, I agree with Joycey. I think this is the most fluid Mario feels in the trilogy and probably the entire series. If I had to play as Mario in a large room only with a couple of platforms, I think Sunshine is the iteration of Mario I would pick. FLUDD is a welcome addition, even though I think their toolkit works a lot better when controlling with a GameCube controller, which they've literally just added support for this week. But despite this, I'm not a fan of the removal of the long jump. It seems like such an odd design choice. If the long jump were to be missing from any game in this trilogy, Sunshine is the best candidate, as you can make up the distance with FLUDD, but that takes a lot longer and doesn't allow for a satisfying gameplay. Not a deal breaker by any means, but I do think the long jump would have made it a bit better. And I think it's one of those symptoms of playing these games back to back, is having done so much time in Mario 64, I did feel, oh no, I can't do that long jump now. And it feels like, part of your kind of Mario brain has just been ripped away from you, and you're like, yes, FLUDD does kind of effectively do the same thing, but it's not as snappy. There's a real satisfaction to a movement with Mario that chains a long jump in the middle of it. And I wonder if either of you felt the lack of that, or if you thought about it when you were playing.
Yeah, I've always kind of wondered about the lack of the long jump. Thinking about it right now, I'm wondering if it was because of a lack of inputs on the GameCube controller, because obviously you have R being for squirting, holding it down, because GameCube controller had analog triggers. So in the original release, and now if you use the GameCube controller on this re-release, holding the button down a little bit would allow Mario to run and spray, and holding it down locks Mario into place, and you can kind of aim FLUDD. But they have this move which kind of doesn't ever really get used, where if you hit L, you can do a weird like strafing side to side move with FLUDD.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's why they didn't include the long jump. The other thing I can think of is, so the semi-replacement for the long jump in this game is hitting A and B at the same time, where you do that sort of super long dive, but I think pretty intentionally you can't use FLUDD after you do that, which is, the dive is the only move I can think of off the top of my head that you're locked out of using FLUDD from. And I'm wondering if it's because they thought it would cheese some of the platforming in the game.
Yeah,
You'd have too much.
Think
the
idea of doing a long jump into FLUDD is something they clearly didn't want, because the advantage of the long jump versus a triple jump, or I guess a spin jump is a good example where you can do it on the spot, but you can more or less do a long jump almost from stationary. I know you have to be moving a bit, but you can do it off a very small area,
right?
Like
exactly.
You could in 64, like you can in Odyssey and Galaxy. So I think the idea of having a long jump that could then go into FLUDD, they probably would have had to nerf the length of time you could even hover and stuff like that. And they thought, you know what, we can just input the spin jump, the backflip. Obviously, there's a triple jump there. We'll take out the long jump, and then people can focus on the hover nozzle. And I completely agree that, like, when you are in the secret levels, the FLUDDless levels, it does feel weird to not have that ability to do the long jump, because there's quite a lot of situations where that long jump would make a big difference on those secret levels. And when you actually step back and think, hey, Odyssey is the other Mario game that I hold in great esteem for like how the movement feels, and that game's got long jump, but like you're saying, Devon, about the dive, in this game Mario Odyssey also has a dive, and on top of that it's got a hat you can throw and then jump on that, so it's like almost there's some sort of weird synergy between
the hat throw to dive on hat jump to dive again combo in Odyssey might be my favorite like movement ability in a 3D platform.
Totally, and
it's up there.
I think it's almost like an evolution of the hover nozzle in that sense, in a weird way.
I would
like
agree.
It's very interesting how it's evolved, but I agree that Sunshine standalone, it's weird there's no long jump, although I think they would have had to drastically redesign aspects of the game if it was to be in there. Yeah.
It definitely makes sense.
Cool. So Gelato Beach is the next level, and this is one that has one of the worst enemies in the game.
I think it's the best enemies.
Yeah.
The Cataquacks. So I've been scarred by the Cataquacks since I was a wee child. And
from Double Dash or Sunshine or both?
It was mainly
well.
Double Dash. Double Dash was the thing.
Track.
Peach Beach, one of the worst levels in Mario Kart history. I did not like, just because the fucking Cataquacks are there. They are a living fucking nightmare. But I think it speaks to like the idea that they are designing new enemies in this game, right? You're not just getting Goombas and Koopas and stuff, which
there are no
is
Goombas.
Interesting because
not a single one.
No, right? Like, it's kind of wild when you think about it. There are really no traditional Mario enemies across this entire thing, because you are in a different kingdom ostensibly, right? Delfino is a different place to the Mushroom Kingdom, quote unquote, and so you are getting some of these weird enemies that you come up against. How do you feel like the enemy variety was in this game, and are there any that you liked more than others or thought were worse than the Cataquacks? Because I feel like they are just number one on my list, my shit list, basically.
Nothing worse than the Cataquacks, I would say. Purely just because of that stupid watermelon shine.
Yes, yeah. It's rough, and it's it's one of those ones that...
I really like the mix of like enemies they've got with like the bloopers. I cannot defend the wind.
The wind is terrible.
Those like do the Koopa-like things that throw their electric shells, and then
I like
the electric
those
Koopas.
They're really cool. Like the idea that you squirt them while their shell is away and they get stunned and then they die by getting hit by their own electric shell is very satisfying. And
I don't think I defeated a single one of those in the entire game because I didn't realize that's what you had to do to defeat them.
Really?
I mean, a lot of the enemies are very optional. They're just sort of like side dressing, but I'd argue they're a bit like that in 64.
That is totally a thing, right? Like, I do think that 3D Mario games do sometimes suffer from just you can ignore the enemies.
Absolutely.
It's almost like a remnant of the 2D series in a way, where enemies feel more compulsory, and then they felt, it's an evolution of that. We've got to put enemies in. Obviously, it's Mario.
Sure.
I definitely think that Galaxy and Galaxy 2 do a much better job of making enemies matter in the level design and like forcing you to kill them,
because the worlds are smaller and tighter, more linear. It almost forces you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
And especially some of those levels require you to kill enemies in order to get a key or something, right? So
yeah.
If you think about it like that, I think Odyssey is kind of the next evolution of that, where they kind of learned to fix that problem by, instead of making enemies an obstacle, making them a power up. Which was certainly a smart idea. But yeah, I think the reason that the Galaxy games, the enemy design feels a little bit tighter than this in 64 is just like you said, Bally. It's more tighter, linear experience, so that they can be used more as an obstacle. In a sandbox game, in a platformer, it's like, why would I not just jump around it, or just avoid it entirely? So yeah,
I think I might change my mind about my favorite level. I think it might be Gelato Beach, just because looking at these shines and
the Sandbird.
The Sandbird's not that bad. That's the thing. Like, I didn't think it was too terrible, and like, it's probably the worst, like, most difficult shine of these compulsory ones, at least. But the rest of them are like, I mean, the fucking something about the races in this game is like, why did you even bother? Like, these are maybe. It's so weird comparing shit like the lily pad shine to the fucking race pianissimo, because one of them is just like, I could be a baby and beat this guy. He's so fucking slow. Like, and none of the races are interesting level design wise, because these levels are so open and you have so many abilities to get around the place that just getting from one side to the other is incredibly easy, and you can do it stupidly fast. The same goes for the Noki Bay one of this. Is like, I mean, like, I have so much distance and height here that I can basically just dive in the water, swim a little bit, and I'm there at the flagpole. And I think they're some of the worst design shines in the game because they're just like, I don't know, just go there.
See, they're harmless to me, though, because they take 90 seconds to complete.
Sure, totally. I get that. Like, they're just kind of like, they're junk food, right? They're just like, oh, I got a shine for doing almost nothing.
They don't feel like, I do think the races in Odyssey feel really clutch and like you do have to master them. It feels really satisfying. I agree you don't get quite the same level of satisfaction, but it's still nice to get out your move set, hover nozzle, turbo nozzle, whatever you're using to get across the stage. And
but
cool.
I do think even the races in 64 are more interesting than that. I think the first one with Cooper the Quick is interesting just because you're less familiar with the game and the game world and how you move around. And then the second one on Tiny Huge Island has a lot of pitfalls to it, and like it is tricky with the wind blowing against you on the bridge and stuff. You definitely have to work for those ones versus these ones where they kind of are just given to you.
So the first two I felt that way, but replaying it, the Pianta Village one actually, I was a little bit closer than I thought. It's definitely tighter.
Yeah, that's definitely the closest one. It still was my first. I did it first try and didn't really have a huge problem.
Yes. Same thing for me, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's probably. It contributes to the ease of playing through this level. And I think also it's one of the better looking levels. Like as much as the stupid sticky guys on the mirror is really stupid and kind of frustrating in terms of its physics and how it even properly works.
It's a fun idea though, and like the look of those sundials is pretty cool.
Yeah, like the reflections. I was making a joke about like ray tracing. It's like, fuck ray tracing, man. Look at Mario Sunshine. For sure. Matria kind of talked about the visuals a bit, saying that it doesn't quite compete with Galaxy, especially as it lacks 60 frames per second, which I would love that. But I really love the look, the setting, everything. Even the characters are the most colourful and interesting set we've had in arguably any 3D Mario. And I think Odyssey definitely is up there now. I'd say maybe Odyssey just because of its wackiness. You just have so many strange places you go to. And you have like characters that are sentient forks and stuff like that. But there's a charm to the Delfino Islanders and so we're trying to figure out the Noki Bay people. Devon, do you have any insight to like
what about
who
them?
What are they? Are they just Noki Bay people? I don't know.
They're just Noki Bay people. They're called
Nokis. They look a little bit like Noki. Like
I think we're trying to figure out what their name would be. Are they called like Nokias? Like
No, they're called Nokis, just Noki. So it's Noki
They're
Bay.
Just Nokis,
just like it's Pianta Village, it's Noki Bay. It's just I guess where they inhabit, I suppose.
Yes. Right. They just exist.
Yeah.
And this level does also have like the Wiggler boss fight, which is not great.
It's a cool one.
I like that one.
It's a cool idea.
Yeah.
It's a neat idea. I think it's
hard.
just like you feel the lack of polish in some of these animations. Like the sand coming out in this weird triangle and just like kind of bamfing is just doesn't feel like the same level of polish, as well as like having a giant arrow pointing at the specific point. Like that feels so out of place in a Mario game, a giant arrow telling you what to do. But those arrows are constant throughout Sunshine, like whether it's the piranha plant, but all these bosses have fucking arrows pointing at them. And I'm like, okay, I mean, it's probably because design-wise, they're just not as clear as some other Nintendo design bosses about like where you need to hit, what you need to do specifically. Because I believe you can't damage that Wiggler unless you slam it on where the arrow is pointed, right?
Yeah, you need to hit it on the specific like section, little circle that the arrow is pointing on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And then the sandbird, which isn't actually that bad, I find. Like the thing is, you can get those first like 6 coins. Then there's the one where you have to be careful to turn on the side, and that's really the point at which you'll die or not, right? You either die on that or you die right at the end being stupid trying to get the last one.
But I mean, you've got your hover nozzle; it's all good. It's not too bad.
Yeah, that would be a lot more difficult without the hover nozzle, I think.
Dude, that floodless, I don't want to do that. That sounds
the blue
bad.
coins are pretty easy to get there as well.
Yeah, so how did you feel about like doing blue coins, Devon, generally? We've got a couple of comments here about them, about people's thoughts and going for them. Joycey said, not all the missions are the best and the physics are unforgivable at times. Getting all the blue coins without a guide as well as madness and kind of unrealistic with how spread out and obtuse some of the coins can be to get. Despite that, though, it's ended up going from my least favorite of the 3D All-Stars collection to probably my favorite. So Joycey coming out positive at the end, even though the blue coins were stupid. And then Jason Lee said, I like Sunshine, but I like 64 a lot better. I got the 120 shines in Sunshine, but having to use a guide to find many of the blue coins and even some of the hidden shines was a huge drag. Also, the jump mechanic is a tad off. I don't know how many times I hit the button only to fall off a ledge instead. When you have to train yourself to jump early, something isn't right. And this is like my biggest problem with those floodless levels.
I would agree with that complaint. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Like, I never realized this before Celeste and the developers talked about Coyote Time, but I always talk about Coyote Time now, which is the idea that if you are slightly off a ledge, but you still press the jump button, it will still allow you to jump. And it's the part of the reason why Celeste feels so fucking good, because you never have that instance of, I pressed the button, but it didn't do anything.
And Odyssey have any Coyote Time?
I feel like Odyssey and Galaxy probably do have a bit better of that stuff.
I'm wondering what it is with this game, because I've always had that issue too. I'm used to it now, so I don't suffer from it as much. But if you hit, even if you hit A, I think at the very end of the ledge, just like one of the last pixels, Mario goes into this weird kind of sliding animation where he puts his arms out to the side.
Just like shuffling, like it almost glitches out and it's like wild. There are so many times those weird glitchy things happen.
Slipping point is a common theme amongst, because he's especially in the secret levels, he's constantly platforming on surfaces that aren't flat and they're rotating and doing these things. And the point at which he goes from standing on them to sliding on them is such a... There's no shades of grey. It's black and white. He's either standing or sliding. And what second he's sliding, you're dead, man. Like, you're gone. It's not happening.
Yeah, that's definitely a big problem. But regarding blue coins, do you have a kind of inbuilt like knowledge of where all the blue coins are just from knowing this game so well, or?
Yeah, I'm going for 100% for the first time. I've always started it and then never done it. I haven't done it as the time of recording this. I definitely know where a decent amount of them are, but I've also had to look up a guide for them, which I don't really mind. It's not that big of a deal. I think in a lot of ways, the blue coins are the precursor to the moons in Odyssey, just because they are in these kind of more open areas. They're scattered around. There's 31s in every level, and I think the biggest problem with the blue coins that they ended up fixing in Odyssey is a couple of things. First of all, there's a tracking system in Odyssey, so you can see which ones you've actually gotten or not. And I think I don't remember if this is available before you beat the game or not, but not only is there a tracking system so you can see, okay, I got this many of blue coins, there's also a little description and name for each blue coin that kind of points you or for each moon, that kind of points you in the direction for what you might need to do for the blue coins. Most of the blue coins are pretty easy to find and pretty available, but some of them are very strange. Like, there's a couple of blue coins where it's like, this specific beehive you need to spray down with Yoshi and eat every single bee, and once you eat the last bee, you'll get the blue coin. And it's like, okay, how the hell was I supposed to know to do that? So, there's stuff that's strange like that. However, in the defense of this game, I'm not sure if you did, Bally. I know both NBZ and I both got 880 moons in.
I think it's 999.
It's 999, but it's 880 individual moons from what I remember.
Right.
Yeah. In Odyssey. I mean,
Odyssey. Yeah.
I'm not embarrassed in saying this. I got a majority of the moons without looking things up, but there was a point where it's like, all right, I'm not sure where these fucking things are. Let me just look up and see where they are. I think there's always stuff like that in games.
When you have that many, you're always going to have that, right? It's like getting all the shards in the infamous game. Or so Rachel also wrote in about this and said, yes, I got all the blue coins. I'm that person again. Even though I left them all at the end and used a guide to mop them up all easily enough while listening to podcasts, I'm not sure I'd recommend it to anyone else. Perhaps the many Ubisoft games I've played have just desensitized me to needless collectibles. And in a sense, like this is the progenitor of that idea. This like the collectibles and 3D platformers has kind of turned into question marks on a map in open world games, right? Like it's kind of that mindless listen to a podcast activity that you just have your brain do in the background, you know. And there is a certain satisfaction to it, especially if you like the movement of Sunshine and you just enjoy going around in that world. It's like when I was playing Spider-Man recently. Of like, I finished Spider-Man, I'd done everything I could, but I was still swinging around the city just because it felt good to do so. And I totally understand that for people who just want to still be in that world and have something to do.
I felt that a lot with Odyssey. Totally. And I like the movement in Sunshine, and I would say that I just need that counter. If a remake of this game comes out, they freshen some stuff up, and I hope that would include a blue coin counter. I think I'd go for it, but I just don't feel.
But also there are some blue coins, like the ring around the end of Corona Mountain, where there's like 9 of them, and it's just like none of those are fun to get. That's just a heart attack, you know.
Those I will not excuse. Yeah, I mean, but that's more of an issue with the level design than the actual blue coins themselves.
Totally.
The other thing I quickly want to mention about the blue coins is I think one of the reasons people enjoy them less is because they save them all for the end. Like, you beat the levels, you don't get any of the blue coins, even if you just see them out in the open, and then you just, boom, marathon through it and get all 30. I think it's much more enjoyable to just go through and pick up the actual blue coins. However, the issue with that is that there's not a counter, so it can be difficult to remember which ones you got and which ones you didn't. And on top of that, another issue that people bring up with the blue coins a lot, which I completely agree with, I think is indefensible. However, it doesn't come up as much as people make it out to, is that some of the blue coins are mission dependent. And Odyssey obviously doesn't have that problem because there aren't missions, you're just in the world. So having to go through all 8 missions being like, all right, which one of these fucking missions can I get this coin in is another flaw.
Yeah, definitely. It's the reason I didn't do any of them. I think I got 20 naturally through the game, and that's like 2 extra shines. So great. Like, really not making much of a dent there.
But that's the thing, right? People can bitch and complain about the blue coins all they want, and I agree with a good portion of the complaints, but they're completely 100% optional. You don't need to pick up a single blue coin to beat this game.
Yeah. One of the nice things about picking up blue coins is you get to save your game there and then in the level, which is, I don't know, doesn't really matter that much because every time you boot it up, you stand at the start of the game anyway, which is one of those like Mario 64 things. Every time you boot it up, you're outside the castle again. It's like, all right, let's get to the level. Peanut Park. I think Peanut Park is really fun thematically. However, it has the single worst compulsory shine in the entire fucking game. Behind the
I was telling you that. Can I tell you something?
To get up the back.
I
don't want to know.
In my 11, almost 12 years of playing this game, I have never ever done that shine properly. If you go in the red coin mission, you know how you have to climb up that like cage, and you have to kill those little electro cage, those little electro spider guys, and then there are coins on top of there. If you spin jump off of that and then use the hover nozzle, you can skip it completely and just get right to where the big electro Koopa guy is. So
I like that about this game, that there
I do too.
Like,
I really enjoy
a lot of
that
levels
stuff.
You can kind of find these cool jumps and spin jump and hover jump and get across.
Right, like with the rocket nozzle from below in Rio Harbor, right?
Yeah.
Like that's it's almost like a speedrunner's trick built into the level, which, yes, that is cool. The actual design of the way they intend you to do that level is straight up, so it is a combination of awful level design, a camera that does not work for it, and just the resetting nature that makes some of these levels so bad, of like, you get so high, make one error, you're down to the fucking bottom again, right? Like, it is, it's a Sisyphus rolling a fucking boulder up the hill of Mario Sunshine is the best way to describe it.
I would argue you also did this at a point where I would say you hadn't mastered the moveset, and
that's fair.
For that reason,
I will disagree with this very hard, because even at this point in time, I don't think I could do that again, without doing multiple tries.
I would disagree with that. I'm not going to say it's well designed, but I think you would find it less infuriating doing it now than you did as the 4th level in the game.
I honestly could not disagree more. It still haunts my dreams.
We'll have to agree to disagree, because you have definitely better than you are.
Sure, I've improved, but there are some things for which even that improvement will not change a bad level, right? Like, there are some things that are just so poorly made and so poorly conceived of that even with my improved skill, it's just still kind of luck to some extent to when you get up to that point. And I don't think if my luck...
You know Devon's trick, it's not an issue.
Well, yeah, okay, sure. Obviously, I can do it that way. But, like, if I was to do it legitimately, it is a garbage, fucking terrible shine. It is absolutely... I think it is only matched in terribleness by some of the sand levels in 64. That is how terrible I think it is.
Scathing.
It's awful.
One thing I would like...
But I don't think it's my worst level overall.
So we complained about the camera in this section. One thing I actually would like to commend this game on, while the camera controls aren't probably up to the standards of modern games, I would say for 2002, for the era that this released in, it surpasses the camera in the Galaxy games, absolutely. Mario Sunshine...
Well, the thing with the Galaxy games to me is that for the most part, you don't need to worry about the camera because the game is so well designed at like putting the camera where it's supposed to be every time.
For the most part. But I think we'll find some moments it's not great.
Yeah, that's always been my experience with Galaxy. 90% of the time the camera's great, but 10% of the time it's kind of a bitch and frustrating that you can't move it. But for a game in 2002, this game has a pretty outstanding camera, I think. Like I said, it's not quite up to modern standards, but it I don't know. It's certainly a huge step up.
I really do appreciate the extent to which you zoom out, right? Like, I appreciate that it can really do a bird's eye view of where you are, which is nice.
It's more useful than you'd think.
Yes, definitely is. But yeah, I think part of it is also, hey, they fixed it this time so it's not inverted also. So that's another thing that, makes it a bit more bearable.
That was an interesting change for me because as I'm sure you all know now, I've played this game countless number of times. So the first hour or so of playing the Switch port was just making my mind do fucking mental gymnastics trying to get the camera to work. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I do like the theming of this level. I think it definitely has. One of the other things is I get motion sickness, and so riding on that fucking roller coaster was not fun. I did manage to do it like relatively quickly, but it just... Yeah, and then there's another one, which is fucking the moles and their stupid little
little cannon tank things.
Yeah, throwing bombs at the moles. I'm just not a real fan of that, and like it's fine as a way to get into the secret level, but
it's a lot to think about.
I feel like there's too many shines in this level that exist outside of the theme park. Or there's maybe only a couple, I guess. But like when you're talking about but when you're talking about like 7 dedicated shines, then you kind of, it's like, why are you doing this in this weird, like, patch of sand with just a few sunflowers over here? It's a little strange.
You get Yoshi this level,
because
though.
You do, go on a weird roundabout with Yoshi, and that's interesting. Yeah.
Well, this level is how you unlock him. The thing that triggers unlocking Yoshi, for some reason, is those weird little egg stompy guys that you were talking about earlier in the segment. Once you beat that mission, for some reason, Yoshi just appears.
Yeah, and that happens, I think, a lot in terms of when you go back to the plaza. It's like, Shadow Mario's here, he has the rocket nozzle. Who knows why, but he has it. Go chase him down.
There are hidden triggers, but... Yeah, it definitely for a first timer. It's like, why the hell do I have this now? Why was it not here before?
It's like, I will say I prefer the way this does it to the way 64 does it for some of the hats in terms of like getting the fucking metal cap, like a level within a level in fucking Hazy Mazy Cave is just like, fucking come on, man. Like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, another way I think 64 DS is an improvement. There's just that one level.
Yeah,
and then you got all of them.
Yeah, exactly. That is very true. Cool. Any other thoughts on Peanut Park, or should we move on to Serena Beach?
No, I like I
move on.
Cool. Serena Beach is the worst level in this fucking game.
Probably. I think I might agree. Yeah.
I agree.
I think every single shine is terrible. The Manta Storm, where you have a million fucking manta rays and you have to kill them all. And do you have a time limit for this one? I don't think you have a time limit, but it's just like the way that, you have those situations of enemies that split in two, And like this just takes that to the nth degree, where
and
it's
then
like,
they charge after
how
you
about
once that you get them down.
yeah, how about one giant one that splits into like 50, and then they split into 100, and they split into 200, and it's like, fuck off! Like, I don't want to do this. This is incredibly painful. Not to mention they create that electric sludge on the ground that hurts you and is really hard to get out of once you like chain together. It's like the fire in this game where you don't get the big jump like you get in Mario 64.
Jesus Christ, the fire just screws you, the fire goop or whatever.
Yeah. You can't like cheese that level in the village where you have all the fire by like jumping your ass over there, because you die instantly basically. There's the inside the hotel to get the secret by doing the stupid booze,
also
like
turn into platforms.
Changing them. They also turn into platforms. There's the fucking casino underground area where you have to turn all the panels, and that is the most frustrating shit in the universe.
The panels suck, but I think the boss is fine. It's cool.
By the way, I had to do that twice because there's a hidden red coin shine in all the secret levels, and that's one of the secret levels.
Oh my god, are you fucking serious? Yeah. That's awful. There is the fucking scrubbing the beach in terms of like getting every tiny percent. I think it's like 97 point something % you have to get.
It's ridiculous. You have to get a huge percentage of it, and that's the one. If it wasn't helpful enough in the Shadow Mario boss fights, that's the one where the shotgun blast is like essential to even complete it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like I don't think I would have given up on some of this stuff, like the Manta Storm and that level without the shotgun blast. Jesus, I don't.
I played the whole game without the shotgun blast.
Really?
I know, and I don't understand how you still enjoy it after
I
doing
don't
that,
think I use it quite as much as NDZ, but it's really helpful for clearing out big sections of goop all at once, and that level in particular, because not only do you have to get like 97% or whatever, that's one of the few missions in the game where the time limit is actually like pretty tight. I remember, I think I did it first or second try this run, but I remember as a kid that was one of the levels that always tripped me up quite a bit.
Yes. And then you have, again, one of the worst shines in the game, which is just Yoshi needs a pineapple. Fucking figure it out, mate. All the doors are locked.
Yep.
And you gotta find a route up a toilet, and then you gotta go through 7 different rooms. Apparently, at some point, you have to triple jump. That's what Bally trolled me with. I was like, "So what do I do next, Bally?" And you're like, "Oh, triple jump." And I was like, "Triple jump? What is that gonna?" And then you're like, "No, I'm just trolling it." Like, for fuck's sake! This level is trolling me enough, Bally. I don't need your bullshit on top of it.
What do you think
I
of
was
the
just
King
stalling because
Fu
I was trying to find the next thing to do. I was like, do a triple jump, and then I was like looking up the rest.
Oh god, it's just a living night. It literally is like a Grim Fandango style adventure game type puzzle, and it's awful. It's just so bad. And then you have to get up to the top and figure out like logically where the place to body slam down into is, because there are 4 different options, and like if you mess it up you have to go all the way back to get the pineapple again to get Yoshi again. Like any mistake in this level, like what I did going to a space where Yoshi can't, if you're on Yoshi you can't exit a doorway still being on Yoshi.
Yeah, because you have to hit B, so and that does the tongue. Yep.
You have to hit although for whatever reason you can open a doorway when you're holding a pineapple, but for some reason when you're riding a dinosaur you can't. Like there's even in that it's just a stupid inconsistency to the design. It's garbage.
One thing I will say, very quickly, I do enjoy about this level, one of the few things, because I agree, I think it's probably this and maybe Pianta Village as well. Yeah, I think that's not one of the best. Definitely the 2 worst. This level, the outdoor section is really pretty. Sunset is beautiful.
Pretty. I love the sunset.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
See, none of that is going to help when you spend most of your time inside the fucking hotel, right? Like, sure, you could say that, but so many of these, especially the ones that you spend the most time in, are just inside this goddamn nightmare of a place. PR Billy said, I genuinely was having fun in the game until I asked my friend how to beat it, and he informed me that I have to beat the 7th out of 8 mission on every world. That's such an absurd requirement, especially for a Nintendo game. This also makes blue coins feel pointless, as progression isn't gated by shines, but rather by completing specific missions. In a similar vein, missions are sequential in that in order to play a later mission in a level, you have to beat all missions previous to that. This is a huge step down from 64's explore at your own free will sort of mentality. This really hurt me in the Hotel Delfino level, where I got so frustrated with the first shine that I just skipped that level altogether until the end, which again just isn't a good way to do it, because that means by the end of the game you're banging your head against the thing that's just blocking you from finishing it and rolling credits, right?
Totally.
It's I cannot describe how much I fucking hate this level. This level might be the single reason why I haven't been converted to the Church of Mario Sunshine. It is so awful. It may be the worst entire level that Nintendo have ever designed in the history of the company.
Oh, I don't know if I'd go that far, personally.
I mean, in terms of their big games, if we're talking about big, like, budget games that have a audience around them, I'm not talking about, like, fucking Takamaru's...
It's maybe the worst world in a 3D Mario game. I could go that far, sure.
Right. Yes, yeah. And I'm not talking about random NES games like Takamaru's Ninja Castle or some shit, you know? Because obviously
the quicksand in Super Metroid.
It's annoying.
Yeah, I hate that.
But you figure it out, you know? Like
you figure out Serena Beach.
No, you don't. Serena Beach figures out you.
I just thought of this. Besides that, like 2 very quick sections in Noki Bay, in a game that's all about water and you know being tropical and stuff, there's not a water level in this game really.
I mean, there are points where you swim, like the red coins in the Gelato Beach.
Sure, but not for super long. It's not like Jolly Roger Bay or Dire
Docks.
A
ton of underwater. Yeah. There's like we'll get to Noki Bay with the eel section, but you're right. That's about it.
Oh fuck.
Yeah,
definitely. Cool. Well, let's leave that terrible level in the bin and move on to Noki Bay, which again, like, has
very pretty level again.
Also pretty.
I love the look.
I don't like it. I think the poison water aesthetic just doesn't gel with me. I think it's just also a bit of a weird, like.
It's not poison. He just has bad breath. His teeth are just stinky.
You clear it up anyway.
Yeah, I know, but like, framing. I just
exactly.
It's not.
You can breathe underwater because you put a fishbowl on your head. Like, it's beautiful stuff.
No. You can't breathe
true.
underwater because your fucking life still drains.
You just, like, sink for some reason. Your physics are different.
Oh, God. But again, this is, again, another one where, like, it's very vertical. So much of Mario Sunshine is incredibly vertical. And, like, that first one that you do is going up the side, like, all these kind of areas where things are rolling down the hill and you're trying to figure out how to get up there. You're putting water into a jug and it's raising another thing. And you're trying to do a side wall jump. And some of these things you spray and they shoot out a bit of a platform. And yeah, like, it was okay. But, like, that's kind of the extent to which you explore the level. And then the rest of it is different areas around. Obviously, you go to the other side to do, like, the shooting of the wall, and then you go in the maze in the wall.
2 repeated bosses in this level. You got the mole tank thing, and you got the big blooper coming back again. He's randomly sitting at the top. It's like, I was not expecting to find you up here.
I will say, this level has one of my favorite levels in the game, which I don't enjoy getting to it, but the secret level in this one, the one where you go inside the shell, I think that's the best floodless level in the game. It's probably the most difficult.
Really so remind me which one that is.
Start
what do you have
in
to do
like
in that one?
an ant box almost. Like, it's a big glass box you start in.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of weird diagonal wall jumps that you have to do. It's very creative. It's a lot more difficult and a lot more kind of technical than you'd expect from a Mario game, but it's
less
cool.
Like random shapes you're jumping on that you'll slip and slide all over. It's genuinely like, right, you need to nail this triple wall jump here.
Oh my good. Can we talk about the physics on those fucking things in the floodless levels? Because it really
the gears, those are the worst.
No, I mean the rotating boxes, like the stuff that that moves as you're on top of them and you have to get to the other side.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. The little GameCube, as I used to call them, things.
Basically.
Those are not great, but the ones in particular I always thought were bad were the gears.
They defy logic, right? Like, when you think about it, I think the seed was sowed for me when I was playing 64, this year, and the stupid, rolling log section where it doesn't make sense.
Which section are you talking about there? I'm trying to.
It's on Tall Mountain. It's like a magnetic log.
Oh, yeah, and there's one in Lethal Lava Land too, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So those just don't make any sense in terms of the slipping point and like how far you can be on them.
And then they do the opposite for Sunshine.
Yeah, you feel like almost magnetically on them when you look like you should be falling off like ages ago. And Sunshine,
kind of
in some ways the opposite, but in some ways, for some reason, it works in ways that you don't imagine it to. Like, there's a weird inconsistency sometimes to how it works, and sometimes you slip when you shouldn't feel like you should. And yeah, that stuff is, again, just adds a bit to, like, it takes away from the idea that this game is skill-based, because it feels like it's throwing in just a wrinkle that who knows how it's going to go this time, right? Like, will you make it, will you not?
That's a solid criticism. I think that's another element of this game being rushed in development and lacking a little bit of that polish. That's for sure.
Yeah, just needs a little more work on that physics engine, I guess, for those shapes. Mm-hmm. And I think as strong as the secret levels are, they'd be even stronger if all these random platforms you're going on were just a little more predictable.
It's something that's sad about this game, and in particular, sad that we didn't get a full remake instead of just an HD up-res, because remind me to mention it when we get to Pianta Village, but at times, I would say 80% of the time, which is not nearly as much as you want in a video game. You want things to work 100% of the time, obviously. But 80% of the time, the physics in this game just kind of blow my mind. Sometimes they work super well. But yeah, there are those times, like when you were playing the lily pad level a couple of days ago, and Mario falls off and then glitches in between in the water that's supposed to instantly kill him, and half his body is in it.
Oh yeah, like he goes off the ledge for a second, and he's like, "Oh, I'm fine actually. That didn't kill me. Just having a little dip there in the water, you know." For sure, that stuff is very consistent in terms of those floodless levels, especially. I would say is where the most like weird kind of glitching out can happen.
But at the same time, you can get some crazy clips.
Yeah, it's mainly because you don't have the kind of safety net of FLUDD to get you out of those situations in the regular levels, right? I feel like that stuff would happen a lot more often if FLUDD just didn't exist overall in the game, but because you have the safety net outside of the floodless levels. Maybe it's less frequent.
But at the same time, though, as Bally mentioned earlier on, the only like overworld, I guess it's not overworld, but only like, you know, world, whatever you want to call it, level that has a bottomless pit is the final level in the game, and that's Pianta Village. All of the other ones, when you do fail, you're not dying. When in the floodless levels, I mean, every single one of them has a bottomless pit, so you die if you fail a jump.
Totally, and I think they do generally a good job of giving you a gettable one-up every time, like
there's
near the start of the level,
and
which
is a little bit more challenging, which I think is cool, kind of a risk versus reward thing.
Yeah, I always made the mistake of trying to go for that second one, and then
it's usually not worth it
on that second one. Not worth it most of the time, yeah. But yeah, I think the rest of Noki Bay is like, okay, so there's 2 levels where you have really bad, poor controlling underwater sections, and I think the worst thing about the dentist one is, like, it's a fun idea, but you spray to hit him, but it also moves you away from him, so it's just this weird, it's like, oh, I can only damage him by spraying him, but then spraying...
Did you do the red coin fish in that section of the level? I think that might be the 8th mission.
No, I didn't do any of the 8th
I remember watching Beast Crew do it, and it's miserable.
It is. It's not, like, particularly difficult. Like, a lot. That's the thing with Mario Sunshine. A lot of the shines that people complain about are not particularly difficult. They're just, like, a pain in the ass. You know what I mean?
They're tedious, right? Like, they just have that level of annoyance to them that makes you sigh every time you kind of enter the level.
There's a lot of red coin collecting generally.
There's a ridiculous amount.
Like, in the game, it's not the best in that sense.
Yeah, I guess like a lot of these levels have like multiple, like 2 red coin missions per stage, right?
Yeah, but there's normally one after Shadow Mario, but I think there's basically one before every time as well.
In most levels as well have... Some don't. Every level has at least 1 secret level, but most of the worlds in this game have 2 secret levels, and all of those have red coin missions as well.
Right.
So
yeah, and then I don't know. The rest of Noki Bay is like, okay, you do the secret level, and then also you race the Pianta, which is Il Piantissimo.
Would you like to know a weird, cute little fact about Il Piantissimo that I learned from?
Yeah, so I think we're kind of talking about this of like. That character model, right, and where that character model comes from.
Yes, this is exactly what I was going to say.
Yes. Yeah. Where does he come from, Devon?
So he's obviously a human, and he has a fake, like, cardboard-looking Pianta mask on. It's kind of funny.
It goes over the top of his head, trying to look like. Although, like, his build compared to the rest of the Piantas is very different. Like, they're all very round and rotund, and he's like...
Well, I think the idea is he's a human, and he's pretending to be a Pianta.
Totally, yes. With a terrible disguise.
Yeah, it's awful. It's almost as bad as Shadow Mario's, but as we have seen, Piantas are not quite the the smartest of the Mario races are beings. But his model is ripped straight from not a Mario game, but from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, his model is the mailman or the
It's
running
the running
man.
man, I believe, in Ocarina, who's just running around Hyrule Field, and you race him.
And he's where you get the Mask of Truth, I think. From,
Yes.
And yeah.
Yeah. So that's fun. Like there are these weird crossover references that happen across Nintendo's games sometimes, and they're almost really Easter eggs really than anything else. There's not really intentionality that this is the lore of he went through a portal and suddenly appeared in Mario's
Are you
land.
excited? We mentioned the Mario Illumination movie. You excited, when there's a Kirby and Zelda and Metroid movie to get a Marvel style?
Totally, the Nintendo Cinematic Universe, Detective Pikachu kicking that off. People have been talking about okay, what Detective Pikachu, we've got the Sonic movie, and get the Mario movie. It's happening. The Smash Brothers movie will culminate.
Smash Brothers movie, I guess that is what it would be.
I mean, I've not seen the Sonic movie, but Pikachu movie was pretty good, and people said the Sonic movie was pretty good as well. So I think Mario's got to stick the landing, you might say.
I have doubts because of Illumination.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
I don't know. I like the minions, right? Like everyone dunks on them. I'm okay with minions. I'm not like a hater or anything.
What else have they made other than Minions?
So they did Minions.
Despicable Me is like the series, I guess.
Yeah. That's their big one. They did Secret Life of Pets. They did.
Did they do
Sing?
Raining Meatballs or whatever it's called?
No,
Cloudy with a Chance? No, I don't think so.
That was streamed.
Anyway, let's get back to Mario Sunshine. Matraya wrote in about the level design generally and said, I think Sunshine sadly has the worst level design of all 3D Marios. It doesn't help that there are so few levels, but I just don't really find any of them memorable, and some of them are downright frustrating. The large open space is fun to belly slide thanks to FLUDD, but I don't think they make much use of Mario's full kit otherwise. The only truly dedicated platforming sections are the secret areas without FLUDD, and they make me want to play another game. I do think that memorability is one of those things. Even having just finished this game, I can recall like all the individual stars in 64 levels so much easier than I can recall the individual shines in Sunshine levels. And I think partially that's because the Sunshine levels, I don't remember where any of the secret, because the secret shines are all in a different universe essentially, like in this weird like Mario Galaxy style
Well, I
thing.
have to remember which is which,
Yeah, I can't remember which one was from which world or like how I got to them and things like that. So that kind of blends, especially when you have levels that have multiple secrets in them. Like if two of the shines are two secret ones, then you're like, oh yeah, and then what do you do? Oh yeah, and then one of them you fight this boss, but this boss gets fought in that one as well. It does get a little hard to remember just exactly. Aside from like the kind of main core traversal, I would argue every level has like one traversal shine, whether it be the first one in Noki Bay, or the one in Bianco Harbor getting to the top of the windmill, or even the one getting to the back of the thing in Pina Park. Each one has you will traverse the entirety of this space type of shine. Those are the ones that are the most memorable to me personally.
I would agree. I will totally agree on the point that every single time I go into a secret level, I know I pretty much remember every shine in this game, but when I go into the actual like portal to go into the secret realm, I'm always like, all right, which one is it?
Yes.
This time I never remember which one it is. But I would have to respectfully disagree with that email. I think maybe it's because of nostalgia, and maybe I would say a lot of it is just because of the infamy of a lot of these levels.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the individual shines are particularly memorable in this game. Some of them are
I'd
not.
also say I do think the levels are fundamentally designed for the moveset, so I do fundamentally disagree with that massively. I think this is proven.
So do I.
This point is proven by those Shadow Mario chases, and one good cool thing of the Shadow Mario chases, I thought, is that it will show, it's basically Shadow Mario showing you how Mario can traverse the world in a cool way. For example, in Rico Harbor, you never got this far, because you just annihilated him in 5 seconds, but he jumps on
and I was so glad I did that, by the way, because I did not want to chase that motherfucker.
And he does go on the frame a bit, but he will jump onto the top of the boat and then do a spin jump to get up on top of the frame from the boat, and that's how I learned that you could do that, was watching Shadow Mario. So again with Noki Bay, the chase of him where you chase him up the wall in that game, there's very specific points that are designed to be like a specific wall jump or a backflip or a spin jump that you can see that he's sort of telling you how that is done in the level.
Sure. I would mainly put that more under like, higher tier stuff in terms of like just getting better at the game and doing these more complex movements versus like you don't need to know how to do that to finish the levels, right? Like I don't think the game necessarily pushes you to learn the complexity of the moveset just to finish it. And I think that might be what Matthias is getting at more so, is like you can kind of get through it without even using the spin jump once. It's just like an additional thing that's nice and is good if you want to be a master of it, but it's not necessary.
It's not, but I mean, it makes the game so much easier.
Sure. I mean, you do have to learn how to do that to begin with, but I get what you're saying. Cool. Then we have the final area, the good old village, everyone's favorite place. What do you think of this place? It's for me, it's again, not one of my favorites. Like, I think the thing with the last 3 levels is I was enjoying some aspects of Sunshine, but then these 3 levels come along and they all have something that just pisses me off, right?
It's a real shame because I think the earlier levels are stronger both mechanically and thematically than the later levels.
I would agree. This is the least memorable level in the game to me.
Yeah, thematically this level looks so flat and weird, and like it's got like a day-night. It's not a cycle, but like sometimes you go in the day, sometimes you play the level at night, and like that's mildly interesting. But other than that,
something?
It doesn't feel like a village at all, even though it's meant to be one.
No.
Yeah, where are the houses,
no
man?
houses.
Like, where do these people live?
They just live outside on the toadstools.
Yeah. They're just chilling. Usually it's a peaceful place. I guess they just sleep on the ground,
Yeah.
They sleep underneath the village, hanging on for dear life to the
there
wire
you go.
frames. In hammocks.
That would not be comfortable. Imagine sleeping not only, not on a mattress, but with like metal wire framing pressing into your back every night. But one of the things this is the most minor small detail in the world, but something that has endlessly pissed me off about this level is that it starts you off on this tiny little like ledge to a cliff, and then there's a bridge that you have to cross over before you get into the level. So Bianco Hills has something similar like that. It has the little water slide, which is always fun to go down. But this bridge, for some reason, it's the only surface I'm aware of in the game that you can't do the water belly slide on. You can only do the normal one.
I've got a fun point on this. I managed to pull off the water slide on this bridge, and I glitched through the bridge and died. It's like the first time I came back to Pianta Village, first time since 2002 or whatever, and I was like, well, I've mastered the water. I guess I wonder if I could do a water slide all the way down and up, because it's kind of like a U-shaped bridge, and at the bottom of the U, I just glitched through it and died. Yeah.
And isn't that just the best summation of Mario Sunshine, right? Like, oh my goodness.
It's a flaw. I don't think it's a fair summation of the game overall, but there we go.
I think it's a fair summation of, like, you expect things to work in a certain way, and for the most part they do, but there is that 10% of just lack of Nintendo polish that just creeps its head out a bit too often.
See, that I will agree with you on that, but that is kind of the charm of this game to me.
You gotta love the jank,
is it annoying?
Right?
Yeah, is it annoying that happened? Absolutely. Is it like a funny moment to remember, or especially now, with capture cards and streaming and even just built in natively to the Switch, is it a funny moment to like maybe watch and replay? Absolutely.
I totally agree on that point, right? Like some of the bullshit, the weird like shuffling on the edge with the smoke under his feet and like falling off ledges slightly, and like just me barely making it with wall jumps back. It's some of that stuff.
No, this is the most clippable Mario game, I would say, for sure.
Yes, it just creates moments of ridiculous hilarity for the person playing. However, like it is just that lack of polish that makes it stand apart, I would say.
For sure.
Cool. And I think that this is just not a very interesting place. Like, one of the problems with it is
that the third mission sucks with the Inferno goop all around when you have to traverse under the level.
This is another one where Bally just like guided me to the end basically and said, go here, do this, jump there, figure out where the thing is, and I did fall down onto the fire and got hit like 3 times in a row before managing to barely escape. And boy, that is really tricky in that level because the fire is everywhere.
Yeah, I want to mention something about this level. It's what I brought up a couple of minutes ago about the physics. So when I initially played through this game, as I already mentioned, I watched the Chugga Conroy walkthrough, and he used a specific shortcut that he did to get through this level without really having to play it. And I didn't quite remember how to do it, so I just looked up, whatever the mission's level name is. I don't remember what it is.
It's the Goopy Inferno.
The Goopy Inferno. There you go. I looked up Goopy Inferno shortcut, and I found something out about this game that blew my mind. So the way that this level is cheesed is you go through the little river passway on the right side. This is not the way that I had always done it before. And you dip like your toes in the water, and if you side flip or jump, the game recognizes that Mario is wet, and not only does it do that, it will also like splash water that was on his body off of him. So you can use that water. Yeah, you can use that water to clear the goop. Yeah, it's super
that's Breath of the Wild level of immersion right there.
Exactly.
That's mechanics working together seamlessly.
I know. That's the thing though. Mario glitches out and flies all over the place, and belly flops through bridges, as Bally said, but at the same time, there's crazy water physics that the game, recognizes that he's wet, and not only does it do that, after he's wet for a moment, if you jump, it sprays water off of him. That's incredible to me.
That's also so weird because on other levels in Pianta Village, they just remove the water from the little wells in the river in order for you to be forced to fill up FLUDD at the little hot spring. So I'm surprised they didn't just do that for this level. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. We also, of course, have some fun chain chomps going on in this level, which the smaller ones are not too bad, actually. I found those were like...
I feel the opposite. I thought those were more frustrating than the big guy. Yeah.
I guess just because you can just position them, and pull them back. They go pretty far when you pull back on them.
They do.
And I just use the same big kind of pond area for all 3 of them, or 4 of them, however many there are. And so, I don't know, I guess with the shotgun, they get cooled down pretty quick, and then you just kind of ping them in there, and I didn't have much issue with those guys. The big guy, however, with his giant chain and going around the pool and then back, also down another lane in order to get him, is just... He takes so long to cool down is the first thing. He's stupidly hot, so it takes so much water to douse him. But then you have to get it exactly the right space away so that you have the time to pull him, and also make sure he doesn't get physically weird and kind of locked onto a side where the chain just kind of gets hooked on something and can't pull him properly. Yeah, it's one of those parts of the game where they try to do something with the physics and it just doesn't land.
That feels
frustrating.
The way that one's always been easier for me, which is how I did it this time, is you get him off of the little post that he's in at the beginning, and he only moves on that kind of track area of the level, like the roads.
Yes,
and you just don't really bother about like dragging him to the actual pool. His AI will naturally take him over there.
Yeah, it's much better to just wait until he's there.
Exactly.
Also, you can use the barrels to throw at him, but for whatever reason, the barrels don't go very far when you throw them. So
I told him he's at this point, Devon, but it still didn't help him very much at the time.
Nope. Yep. One of the barrels I threw was way too far away, and then I dive bombed one and exploded it and got wet. So
classic sunshine.
Yeah, classic. But then of course we have everyone's favorite level. It's the Chucksters, baby. Chucksters,
baby,
and their mustaches. Gotta love them.
You did it second time.
I did. It's not too bad. Justin from Pennsylvania wrote in, said, I'm a Chuckster. No wonder they've been banished to the alternate universe within Isle Delfino where civilization doesn't exist. Just floating platforms where they are to remain in isolation until they waste away. Yes. The thing is with Chucksters is like, you hear all this horrible things about them. I did it, and I was like, that's all right.
I struggled with that one quite a bit this time.
Interesting. Yeah. I do think that figuring out that it's where exactly Mario is facing and the camera doesn't really have anything to do with it, because you can swing the camera around back the other side of the Pianta and it just matters the exact place where Mario is standing, which I think helped me to just not be as worried about it in terms of like precision of where I'm being aimed. I think that the tricky ones are the ones where they're walking and you have to catch them mid-walk, right? Like that's
the final like throws is the difficult one. I think when the guy's going in that like square and you need to catch him right on like the center, close to the center, and he doesn't stop when he's walking, and you need to make sure Mario's positioned in the exact right way. I think the biggest problem with that Shine is just that because it's placed on the exact like axis whatever coordinates that Mario is placed on, it is super sensitive. So if you're just 15 degrees to the right, that can kill you sometimes.
Because of like the distance you go, like the extrapolation of how much degrees you're off just gets wider and wider, like the more it happens. I think it's just a fundamentally weird idea to have a level based on how, like, talking to people. Don't make talking to people a mechanic in that way, right? Like, it's just so bizarre that they thought that was the way to handle it. Very, very
I would
strange. Agree. But yeah,
that was the first thing I said to you in DMs this morning. If you remember.
Yes,
you just said I'm a chuckster.
God damn it, I'm a chuckster. Oh boy. So
Chuckster for Smash.
Oh boy, you just get a Pianta in Smash.
They just got one move.
Yeah.
One move. They can only grab you and can only throw you. That's it. Oh my goodness. Are there any other kind of shines that we haven't covered that you want to talk about? Justin also wrote in about the watermelon one and said, the watermelon juicing level, they could make a reality show of pro gamers attempting to complete this level and it would receive high ratings because of how comically bad everyone will perform. Just record people raging and growing frustrated at this colossally awful task. I would watch. I kind of did that, when I was streaming it. And I think, people do just do that generally, watch people stream annoying levels like this.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You mentioned it when you talked about your initial impressions of this game, how you think streaming it might have colored your view a little bit. I think there's a reason Mario Sunshine is so popular in terms of like streaming and speedrunning and things like that. There's something just inherently enjoyable about spectating or watching someone else play this game, kind of because of the jank. Is it fun to play the watermelon level? Absolutely not. Is it fun to watch someone else play the watermelon level? Yes.
Yeah.
Fuck yes.
It's the unknown factor, right? It's the idea that anything can happen in Mario Sunshine to some degree, even if that thing that happens is complete fucking bullshit. Like there's a moment when
and isn't that just a microcosm of the crazy world we live in?
Yeah. Totally. I mean, look, the last level of this game is called fucking Corona Mountain, it's a lava escape with spikes and deadly nonsense. It's like, could you think of a more apt analogy for 2020?
True. I'd still rather live there than in 2020.
Yeah.
God. Very quickly on the watermelon level, I think one trolly aspect that Nintendo fully know is massively trolly about it, and if you don't know going into the level, is that there are lots of watermelons scattered across the level. Yes,
that's a good point.
And there's only one of them that will win the competition.
That's the right one.
You can take all the smaller ones to the guy across the bridge, spend 20 minutes, half an hour trying to get all these different watermelons that you think are big enough to win the competition across that bridge that's so difficult, and then he says it's not big enough, and you realize, oh, there's only one that can win it. It's at the top of the mountain, the hardest one to do. So like, it's even trolly in that sense.
I never knew that, just because my only view of this game is people going and getting that fucking giant watermelon.
So when I was 11, I'm running around like, it's not big enough. Why is it?
You're like, that's a pretty big one.
This one seems big. This is on top of the fact of not knowing at the time, you don't need to do this level to beat the game. So
yes.
Yeah. Totally
the other thing that I think people don't realize, and I told you this when we were streaming yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever, NBZ, it's actually much easier to control if you don't spray the watermelon. If you're just kind of walking into it, I think it's a lot easier to have.
Because you want to use your spray to just knock over the cataquack so they don't come near you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Want to save that juice. Can't get rid of all your water because it goes quickly. For sure. Cool, and then there's the end of the game, which is Corona Mountain, which I think is
awful,
terrible. Yeah, again, it's just
worst part of the game.
It's basically the lily pads, but mandatory, but not as bad as
with
the
boat
lily
physics.
Pads. But in some senses,
it's
it is
longer
even
than
like
the lily pads. Though.
I was losing my mind
itself.
trying to get that boat to go anywhere where it was supposed to. It just defied all logic.
Oh boy, try getting the blue coins.
Totally, yeah, and that's exactly what I said when I got to the center. Was like, anyone who wants to go out there and get those blue coins, I mean, I just don't understand why we would ever want to do that, right? It's just
there's no checkpoint either, which is frustrating.
No.
So if you die, you have to do the whole spike and fire section before you do the boat section, which is frustrating.
The checkpoint
because
is only
the
at
spikes...
Bowser.
Yeah,
but at least for blue coins, you do get to save the game after each one.
Oh,
so
true.
That's true.
That is
true.
some respite for that, but
I don't think that helps with the checkpoint though.
No, totally. But like trying to cannon your way even up the clouds is just a bit of a jank, and then he's just in a fucking hot tub and you just have to smash the ground 6 times, and it's not particularly interesting. It can get a little janky as well with the water flowing over the edges and just trying to...
I struggled with the jank quite a lot. Just the bombardment of water, green water I should say, slime, and all the things he was shooting at me, and the points of the shine falling, so you could, the world falls below you. I was falling through platforms. I was trying to platform up and rocket nozzling around, and I struggled quite a lot. MZ, you were clutch and did it first time with one little bit of life left. It was crazy.
Oh, did you really? That's great.
There was like moments of like, oh, that was too close to call, of like me just grabbing the ledge as I fell down from a rocket jump. But
you avoided a lot of pain doing that first time, honestly.
Yes. I think part of it is also like, I think Bally, I don't know when the last time you did you know that was the final boss? Had you seen it before? Because
I mean, I'd seen like the Beast crew face it, but that was like the one time. I'd forgotten how you defeated it. So when I got there, I was like, oh, okay, I guess you do this.
Right.
And worked it
so
out.
this is my history of just watching too many YouTube Let's Plays comes in. Of I've seen that thing done so many fucking times that I know what to do. So it's not too tricky as it could have been potentially.
It really is not that obvious, I guess, that you got to rocket pound or rocket jump up and then ground pound from the top of the jump to break those specific bits on the end of the Shine Sprite platform. Because there's the only time you have to do that like weird fire engulfed ground pound, whatever it is for one secret shine in Delfino Plaza. So it's a strange mechanic for them to add there. I've also always found it strange. Not only does it use the rocket nozzle, which you are barely using in the game, you're using the hover nozzle most of the time. If they're going to test your skills with the rocket nozzle for the last level, why is the turbo nozzle nowhere to be found?
I was going to say, one of the biggest flaws with this game is there's not enough turbo nozzle.
It's so underused.
It's such a fun nozzle to use.
Yeah, I don't... Is it used in any level, like, necessarily at all? Is there any mandatory use?
No, I think it's only optional.
Yeah. And I think it would have been the perfect send-off for the Bowser fight if he had 3 phases and each phase used a different nozzle.
I would. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
Only if they checkpointed after each phase, though, because come on.
Sure.
Which I imagine at the day and time, the era that this was made, there wouldn't have been checkpoints between those
probably
3.
Not.
So.
I mean, I'm thankful that it's just those 5 points or 6 points, whatever it is. I think it's 5 points. I think 6 points we're talking about Judaism, but it's like it's just those 5 points and that's it. Like it's not.
And the last one you don't have to worry about getting back up. The last one just triggers the final cutscene to kill him. So
I like how you fall out of the sky and then somehow just land in Delfino Plaza at the end.
Yeah,
too.
Mario's. Yeah,
FLUDD Delfino Plaza is very cool. I like that. Before you go into
why is Bowser that big? Like he just turns into he's not that big in the entire game.
Have you seen the size of him in Galaxy 2?
I know, but
it's like a skyscraper.
Sure, but I mean, I don't know.
Or in 3D World too.
I think it's just because the rest of the game, when you see him, he's not that size, and then he just suddenly ballooned. It's like the Joker at the end of Arkham Asylum. It's like, why are you so large, man? What's going on?
And somehow Bowser Jr. knew the entire time that wasn't his mom, but he pretended like it was. I don't know.
God. Yeah. So I think it would be nice to kind of close out with some more positive emails on this game, just because I think we've dunked a lot, and lots of emails have been relatively negative about the game. So Zach S, this first thing he says, I think maybe just disqualifies everything he says, but he says best level Serena
I
Beach,
know.
and already I'm not on
I
your
did
side.
see that one in the Discord. I think that was a little
Yeah. Worst level Pina Park, which I can get on board with that, for sure. So Zach says Super Mario Sunshine is my favorite 3D platformer. I don't think it's a perfect game, but the things it does do well, I think it does near perfectly. The opening unskippable cutscenes are a relic of an era thankfully left behind long ago, and the goopy piranha plant you have to fight 4 times in the first 30 minutes is incredibly tedious. The pachinko, the sandbird, and lily pad shines are designed so horribly they really have no business being in a first-party game. However, once the game opens up, it truly becomes something special. The floodless platform levels are challenging but fair, the movement and speed is, in my opinion, unrivaled in any 3D Mario game before or after, and the blue coins are wonderful hidden treasures that really reward you for exploring and making the most of the tools the game gives you. I understand NBZ's dislike of some of Super Mario Sunshine's weaker aspects, but I find them easy to overlook because of how fun it is to just move around in and explore the world. I love the aesthetics and soundtrack, and while I'm not the biggest fan of how this game was ported to the Switch, I'll keep coming back to play it for years to come. I think NBZ had more fun than he'd like to admit replaying the game. Well, the thing is, that's the thing, is watching me stream, you would think he's having a great time, and yes, I'm having a great time, but it's mainly because I'm streaming it and acting up a little to the annoyances of the game and things like that.
Sure.
It's definitely, I think, more enjoyable than I thought it would be overall. However, I'm very solidly behind those criticisms, and I still, overall as an experience, think it is the worst 3D Mario game.
That's fair, but I think the big thing is, I don't think you like it nearly as much as Bally and I do. As you said,
totally.
You're not quite in the, you're not a disciple of the Church of Mario Sunshine.
Absolutely, no. I could not bow down to you, the Pope.
The Pope hasn't baptized you yet.
No, and hopefully never will. We'll see.
But I don't think you hate it. That's the big thing. I do not think you hate this game.
I think I like the idea of hating it more than I hate it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because it's so fun to hate Mario Sunshine. It's such a hateable game, But Zach closes by saying, or at least this is how I felt until I watched NBZ fail to climb the back of the Ferris wheel in Pina Park what felt like 300 times in a row. I've clearly been living under a delusion for most of my adult life. My favorite game is trash. Thank you, NBZ, for finally showing me the light. 0 out of 10, too much water. Zach.
There you go.
So there you go. The real truth comes out at the end. And then we had Rachel, who said, I find it hard to put down my thoughts on Sunshine, as I feel I'm in the minority of thinking it's a very good game, but I can't really explain much to why. It was the first 3D Mario game I ever played on the GameCube, but I don't think nostalgia plays into that too much, as I never actually got very far back then, never being able to beat the electric manta ray in Serena Beach. On this playthrough, I didn't really have any trouble with the notoriously bad levels, like the pachinko or red coins on the poison stream, partly down to luck and partly due to having seen them being played on stream so many times, such is the mimetic nature of this game. It wasn't really down to skill in any one case, and I can't really kid anyone into believing they're in any way good levels. The thing being, I know they're bullshit and can accept that and keep on playing to an extent that becomes a bit of a challenge and part of the novelty of the game. The most frustrated I got with a shine was the 100 coins in Pianta Village, a level that really doesn't have any redeeming features, which was the last shine I got before doing all the blue coins. Meanwhile, my list of positives isn't actually that long. The music is great, who hasn't found themselves whistling the Delfino Plaza theme, but the number of good levels is dwarfed by the number of bad or forgettable ones. Despite getting all 120 shines, only the big blooper fights and the floodless levels really stand out as truly memorable, which is below par for 3D Mario. The secret levels, except the Chucksters, are some of the best Mario in my opinion, and give me a real craving for a new Splatoon single-player campaign, but getting to them is often tedious, looking at you Casino Shine, and Mario feels great to play as fiddly as FLUDD is, it still sets the game apart from its peers, even if the game around him isn't up to scratch. I think ultimately I went into replaying Sunshine with curiosity being my main motivation, and I'm just far more willing to put up with its bullshit than most. I was surprised how much I did enjoy the game, but can certainly understand why people wouldn't, which is absolutely fair. Maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome, maybe it is bad, and I just like a bad game. At the end of the day, there is space for all of us.
That's
Rachel.
A great email.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that probably echoes your thoughts, Devon, quite a bit, right?
I would say so.
You know, you go into this thing knowing that it is really bad in so many elements, and yet you can't stop yourself from really loving it.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. But one of the things I want to defend this game a little bit and say as much as I understand every single criticism of this game, I really don't believe in any world it's terrible. I've played a lot worse games. And
there are lots of bad games out there, and I think fundamentally on a control level, moving Mario around is a lot of fun, and it feels good, and it feels snappy, and from a fundamental like Nintendo mechanical, implementation, they've done a good job here. Like that stuff is not bad. It's just, for me, the level design that surrounds those things make it really hard to enjoy the aspect of the game that is the movement, because so many times it grinds against it.
I think a lot of the discourse on this game, honestly, is because it is a 3D Mario game, it will always be compared to other 3D Mario games, and those are some very high quality games to be compared to. And I think for that reason, sure, a lot of people say it's the worst of the bunch, but arguably, like, all of the 3D Mario games are actually really good games, if not great games. And
I would agree 100%.
In the same sense that a game like Skyward Sword gets so much criticism, it's because it's being compared to other Zelda games. It's not being compared to other dungeon related games. I think that it's a very high bar Nintendo set, so that when they do mistakes like certain shines in Sunshine or something, it is so galling, it is so surprising, and it creates a big waves in terms of discourse in the same way that a game like Sunshine has.
Bally, here's a question for you really quickly, because I certainly know NBZ's answer on this. Do you prefer this game to 64, or do you think you prefer 64, having played them so quickly, or so recently back to back?
I definitely prefer this game to 64.
Yeah,
and
I agree. I totally agree.
I can't argue that that's not without a bit of nostalgia, but I love the Sunshine theming. I love the moveset. My favorite Mario game of all time, I should argue, is Mario Odyssey. And I think of the three games in this collection, this game is clearly the most similar to Mario Odyssey in terms of like how it feels.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree.
And just in terms of that move set, I love it. I feel I've mastered it. I really enjoy it compared to 64 and Galaxy in that sense. So yeah, it's probably still my second bottom Mario, 3D Mario, of a very strong bunch, but I'm the controversial guy who puts 64 at the very bottom, which I'm sure not many people do, but this would be my second bottom. But
I think the thing is, with this collection coming out, a lot of people have come out the woodwork being like, hey, 64's not that good, actually. Why did we hold up on this pedestal? Historically it's very important, but I think even us, I think I've always been a bit skeptical about 64 as like everyone holds it up as one of the greatest games of all time. And like, sure, innovation aplenty, just like groundbreaking, but playing it today, it's, you can see the blemishes, like they're pretty clear.
Sure.
Sunshine was coming in at a low bar, so I think people who have played it and have been like, it's actually quite good, would probably, a lot of the discourse, like we just said, is quite negative around the game like Sunshine, especially compared to Mario 64 that has such a, everyone loves 64, and as we said in our show talking about it, there's a lot of areas in that game that just don't hold up very well.
I think one criticism I will say I've never understood about Sunshine, however, and you mentioned it briefly in the email that we just read, is I don't really hear people talk about it anymore, but for a long time there was a lot of discourse around FLUDD being in the game and how it made the game too easy and all this stuff, and it didn't feel right in a Mario game. I honestly think FLUDD is one of the most intuitive and well-polished elements of the game. FLUDD feels really natural to Mario's moveset, and it I think every aspect of this game is definitely designed around it.
I definitely think one of the issues getting controls under your head and like logical is that some of it doesn't make sense in terms of like shooting FLUDD from a standstill. In order to control where it goes, you use the stick to move Mario, not the camera stick. And I'm like, in 2020, that just isn't logical anymore.
Yeah,
like that is one of those things they should have cleaned up and made better. But yeah, the water physics that come out of FLUDD, like, it's very impressive, especially for the time of like, look at this, like kind of moving around and like
the belly slides are super fun.
Yeah, totally.
I think FLUDD allows the worlds that aren't the FLUDDless levels, obviously, to be much larger and wider, and level like Pinner Park, where there's just platforms very far apart that you're hovering between. And when you actually pull out and look at all the Mario games side by side, it's not until like Mario Odyssey that you see that style of design again in it with like New Donk City or something. And that's because Mario has the ability to jump on his cap, etc., and do like an almost FLUDD-esque move because of the distance he's covering. So when you compare that to games like 64 or Galaxy or even 3D World, the platforming is a lot more rudimentary as a result. And I think Sunshine and Odyssey, because of their moveset and because of FLUDD and ability to jump on Cappy respectively, allows them to stretch out these platforms and the exploration in the world in a way that is quite unique in Mario. And I think that's one reason that I think Sunshine is kind of unique in this 3D collection. It's got those wider platforms as a result of FLUDD.
Yeah, and I think some of the sparsity of the level design makes sense for the moveset, right? In a lot of Mario games, for wall jumps, you require two surfaces to go back and forth between. But you can climb sheer walls in Sunshine by doing a combination of the side jump into wall jump into FLUDD, reverse back onto the surface, which is kind of unique and isn't really seen in a lot of platformers of this style, because you just can't do it with the traditional moveset. So.
But again, sorry to compare it to Odyssey again, but Odyssey you can do a backflip jump, a wall jump, throw Cappy, dive onto Cappy, and then jump again. So like you can almost do a kind of, in a different way, you can do an also like a...
Can you do that backwards, though? When you jump on Cappy, does it not take your momentum the other way, as opposed to going onto the wall? Or maybe you...
I think if you input the stick in the right direction, you can.
Yeah,
but
maybe if you throw the Cap
the
towards
dive,
the wall. Yeah.
After you do the dive, you can't wall jump again. I know.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts before we close out here? I think we've pretty thoroughly covered Super Mario Sunshine and it's all its warts and glories.
I'll just reiterate it one more time. I wish there was more turbo nozzle levels, because that is just...
Agreed.
The one turbo nozzle level that there basically is in Delfino Plaza is really fun. It's just holding boost, moving fast. It's like almost playing a bit like a Sonic game, and as bad as
it's like a Bit Trip Runner or something, right?
Yeah,
like
it kind of is.
As much as
and that's another one that's got good design, I think, because there are those little orange bits on the edge that tell you where you should press the button to jump.
Right.
Yes.
It's well designed.
Give you pre-warning in order to jump.
Yeah. So more of that would have been nice, but yeah. I was very pleased, and it was just such a nice game to pick up and just play through a few shines on Switch, I think.
How much did you guys play handheld versus docked? Because obviously streaming, I played most of this game docked, but handheld, it looks great and runs really nicely.
Yeah, I played about 50-50, somewhere around there.
I played most of it handheld, but a little bit docked, and yeah, it looks great.
One of the things I noticed is actually there's a little bit of framiness in the area near the lighthouse around that area for some reason.
Really?
Like every time I went over there, the frames dipped down into like the 20s for some reason, and I don't know why that was, but
strange.
Yeah.
I would have loved this game in 60. I think all of us would have.
Yes.
But I think it since it was obviously designed around 30 FPS, it doesn't feel limiting, particularly when you're playing the game. I never ran into any issues because of the frame rate, but yeah, I mean, 60 FPS just makes every game in the world better. And in particular, a platformer, it's pretty nice on. So, yeah.
Great. Well, I think that does it. I think that closes our discussion, our quote-unquote celebration of Super Mario Sunshine. Thanks, everybody, for writing in. Had lots of good thoughts there from people. We appreciate that. We'll be back with a vengeance, doing this one more time in January with Super Mario Galaxy.
Yeah, second game isn't real. Doesn't exist.
No, that was where the series ended.
Right. It's where the Mario series ended, actually.
Yeah, we've never seen him since. He's lost. Mario is missing. That'll be the next game, a remake of Mario is Missing. Coming soon. So yes, we'll be asking for that. We're going to have a lot of Game of the Year stuff happening over December, but we will be asking for your thoughts on Galaxy in the new year. So maybe get it over Christmas, boot up your Switch, and have a nice play of Galaxy by the fire as you have some Christmas time.
For sure, definitely play it if you haven't. I think that's one of those games that everyone who's played it recognizes. I mean, that's a damn masterpiece.
Yes,
there's not many flaws with that one.
Yes. As controversial as 64 and Sunshine are in some senses, I think Galaxy is kind of unassailable by a lot of people.
There's not much controversy in Galaxy at all.
Totally.
The only thing I can think of is some people say it's too linear, which I would argue a lot with. But that's a topic for another day.
Totally. Cool. We can be found all over the place in lots of places. Devon, do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, for sure. So you guys can find me. I'm the host of a podcast called EmblemCast. We talk most of the time about Fire Emblem. Not all the time. But we sadly, unlike NBZ and Bally, don't have quite as consistent as an upload schedule, but
Sure.
you can find us at EmblemCast on Twitter. We host our podcast on SoundCloud, but you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, any of those places. I don't think we're on Spotify, actually, which I should look into. But yeah, and you can find our Patreon if you want to support us. Got to plug that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about it for me. Thank you guys, as always, so much for having me on, and I'm excited to come on again, hopefully, in the future if I haven't ruined my chances, and we got to get the both of you back on our show sometime soon.
I definitely think, the first episode that you guested on, where we had a very heated debate about Mario Sunshine, I knew,
did we
since
really?
then, yeah, we did. Yeah, we had.
Wow.
I was very anti-Sunshine in that episode when you were first on, and
I feel like you're a lot less anti-Sunshine now than you were, and that means we've made progress.
Sure, there's some progress, but as soon as that happened, I knew we had to get you on for this episode.
I needed backup. It was going to be a rough ride for me.
It's true.
It was me in the comments versus just Bally. He needed someone in his corner, so for sure.
I said it on Twitter, but Mario Sunshine is better than every game in the Fire Emblem series.
Now that I cannot agree with. But,
I don't know if I totally agree with that myself.
I don't think so. Oh my goodness, can you imagine a Fire Emblem game set in Delfino? That would be a
Jesus
blast.
Christ. I was more imagining, honestly, doing a podcast on 15 games or whatever, every couple of weeks can be difficult enough to come up with new things to talk about. Can you imagine a weekly Mario Sunshine podcast?
People would do it. People come up with stuff, I imagine.
True.
There's that podcast where they watch Paul Blart Mall Cop every year.
Is that a thing?
Yeah. These two guys just torture themselves every Christmas, watch Paul Blart Mall Cop, and do a podcast about
That's a good way to sum up this game. Mario or Super Mario Sunshine, the video game equivalent to Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Yeah, no, for sure. Great. You can find our show all over the place. We're on Twitter and stuff as well. You can find at TNL Podcast is the show's Twitter. I'm at Lord NBZ. Where can you be found, Bally?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. It's BALLYMAN 91.
Fantastic. You can also subscribe to us on all the usual places: Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and podcasting apps. Tune in. Talk to Alexa. Tell to play your episode. It should do it. And yeah, you can find us on Patreon as well, where we have some of our Patreon supporters to thank, Bally.
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier supporters. They are Zach S, Atari Alex, Thomas, Matthew, and my fiancée Caroline. Thank you all for your $10 tier support. But also thank you to all of our other patrons who support the show. It's hugely appreciated. If you don't know, we do another show. It's called This Non-Tender Life, where we talk about everything outside of the world of Nintendo in video games, and I have just bought a PlayStation 5, so I'm in the process of playing some PlayStation 5 games, and we're going to do a bonus episode of This Nintendo Life that's going to come out. So I'm just looking at the calendar right now. So the episode we're recording
it's just next week, isn't it?
Yeah, this episode is going to come out on the 23rd of November. We're going to do a bonus episode of This Nintendo Life, which is going to be open to everyone, not just patrons. This is for everyone. Where I'm going to talk about some PlayStation 5 games on the 30th of November, so end of the month. And yeah, that's going to be out there for everyone, so you can have a try of This Nintendo Life, where we're going to talk about some PlayStation 5 stuff.
Absolutely. I'll be sure to grill Bally about triggers and rumbles and what they feel like, and
they
dust
feel great.
Different from mud.
It's so good.
Sure.
Who knows?
How fast is the SSD? You need to time
exactly. Yeah. Does Bally know what SSD stands for? These are the important questions.
What is array, and how is it traced?
Exactly. Great. Well, I think that probably closes us. Anything else, Bally, that I've forgotten? So many things to say at the end.
I'm a chuckster.
I think I'm a chuckster.
I'm a chuckster.
I'm a chuckster. It's like Spartacus, isn't it? You could just do a meme of the Spartacus thing with. Can someone make that? Just the pianta standing up saying, "I am chuckster."
I'm a chuckster.
Oh dear.
I'm glad to have a new disciple of the Church of Mario Sunshine and Bally.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he always was. Let's be honest.
That's true.
He was just hiding his love.
I've been waiting a long time to replay this game, and I'm glad it finally happened.
Absolutely. I'm glad I played it. And good to just. When people talk to me about you can't hate Mario Sunshine, you've never played it. Well, now I have, motherfuckers. Now I have, and I can say what I like. So that's validation. But yes, we will see you next week for that bonus show, but otherwise in a couple of weeks' time for the next episode of the podcast. Until then, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you very soon. Bye-bye, folks.